Chapter 5 of Fortnite is, to me, currently the worst state the game has ever been in. They just made too many bad changes then, and it never really got better. There was always something there that made the experience not as enjoyable as previous chapters. I really thought Epic Games was going to double down and keep worsening Battle Royale for the new players they attracted with collab skins, but they surprisingly didn't entirely do that. Chapter 6 was by no means amazing, but it wasn't hot garbage either. I can unequivocally say it was better than Chapter 5. Generally though, the best I can do is say Chapter 6 was only okay. To begin, I'll discuss each season and bring up some of their specifics. I won't be discussing stuff like weapons here, because that's something they all share, so those would be better discussed in their own segment later on. Looking back, Season 1 was only alright. I think most may feel this was a goated season because Chapter 5 was still fresh in their minds. Of course a season that feels like a slight return to normalcy is going to seem amazing after being force-fed nothing but trash for an entire year. If we went straight from the OG season of Chapter 4 to Hunters, I don't think it'd be praised as much. Not saying the season was bad, just not amazing. Which is fine for a first season that's ultimately there to ease you into what's to come for the rest of the chapter. As for the whole ninja and Japanese theming, I honestly wasn't too into it, but I ultimately don't care much for a season's theming as long as it isn't soulless and corporate, and the gameplay is decent. I'll always be a sucker for the early maps that didn't really have any theming, and were best described as a small mix of urban and rural America. Remember the gas stations with the old-timey pumps with the bulbs on them? Then when we moved on to Chapter 2, everything was slightly more modernized, and the gas pumps were upgraded to those newer, but still very old boxy ones? I actually don't know where I'm going with this, I'm just kind of gushing. Since we all became ninjas this season, 4 new movement mechanics were introduced. Wall scrambling, wall kicking, boosted jumping, and roll landing. Let's cut to the chase and rank them based on their usefulness. Coming in at number 1 is the wall scramble, an absolutely perfect addition to the player's moveset. First, we had mantling, which allowed a user to climb up 1 wall unit. With wall scrambling, a player can now climb up 2 wall units. It's so simple, yet so genius. Not only is it useful in areas with man-made structures, but terrain with natural sudden elevation as well. Normally, if you come across a stone wall that's a bit too tall for you to mantle up, you run around it until the natural ramp above it is low enough for you to jump up. Or, you just build. If you're in zero build, however, you don't have to take the long way. You can just run up the wall and reach the top just as fast as a build player. This was an extremely helpful addition to the game, and the movement mechanic I used the most out of the 4. At number 2, we have the boosted jump. If you sprint jump off a ledge, your character will get more airtime, allowing you to cross larger gaps more convincingly. It can be of use on rare occasions, but I'm honestly performing this maneuver unnecessarily 99% of the time. Generally, when I sprint jump off a ledge, I don't do it because I want to do a boosted jump, I do it because I want to jump off the ledge. If I just did a normal sprint jump and fell, my goal would have still been accomplished. So while it can be useful from time to time, it's definitely no wall scramble. The only reason the boosted jump sees so much use is because it's activated by meeting 2 conditions that cross all too often. Number 3 is roll landing. If you're holding the jump button as you land after falling from a high enough point, you will perform a roll and replenish some stamina. I honestly didn't see the appeal. The only benefit there is to this maneuver is the stamina recovery, but look how little it gives back. Stamina drains so fast, this extra morsel pretty much makes no difference. Perhaps making it replenish more would have made it better, but I just know if I were in a scenario where I really needed some stamina back, I wouldn't have had an opportunity to roll. Maybe instead of just being able to hold the jump button as you fell, you had to tap it at the right time, making it more of a timing thing so players are less capable of mindlessly doing it for no reason every time they hit the ground. If it had more utility, the roll could have actually been interesting. Instead of just some measly stamina recovery, why not reduce fall damage as well? It wouldn't be reduced by too much, but there could totally be a special case for lethal falls. Instead of dying, the roll would keep you at 1 HP. Could you imagine how clutch something like that would be in certain scenarios combined with a timed tap instead of just holding the button? What if the roll animation itself wasn't just for show, but actually allowed you to evade bullets throughout it? It becomes a dodge roll you have to time properly to execute, but also can't spam to completely avoid all damage because you still have to fall from a suitable height every time. Well, that's enough dreaming. The roll we actually ended up with sucked, as there was very little reason to use it. Last, and certainly least, is the wall kick. There was never any reason to do this unless you count the Perform Wall Kicks quest at the start of the season. Whoever did this intentionally with reason during combat or general parkouring? It's just too situational, especially compared to the other 3 movement mechanics added. I never once thought it'd be beneficial to do a wall kick here, because there was never a time like that. I saw a YouTube short of a pro player who did this crazy wall kick in a build battle and won because of it, is what someone might say. Okay, well, how about you, the average player, show me some clips of you doing this not accidentally more than once? You can't, because you never did something like that. This was only added so they could make the gameplay trailer look a little cool for a second, and so Nick30 could get all surprised when he saw it.
That's an Oni mask! It's gonna be a mid- Oh, what a jump!
Wouldn't you know it, the roll and wall kick got removed halfway into the chapter. I'm sure there was a proper reason for it, like maybe it was messing up players during build battles or something, but I like to think it's because they added very little to the game and nobody cared about them. I'll wrap this up with one last thing. In addition to these 4 movement mechanics, they changed the tactical sprint animation. Now, they probably updated other closely related animations as well, and whatever they are, they're fine. My problem is with the sprinting animation. It's so clearly worse than the original. Why are our arms so stiff? It just looks awkward, man. I don't really care at the end of the day since it doesn't really affect anything, but I do miss the Chapter 3 sprint animation. They got a lot of mileage out of it, you know? They didn't even change it when movement was overhauled in Chapter 5. Speaking of movement, we got this Void Oni mask that allowed you to throw a portal and teleport to wherever it landed. I think this was pretty cool, but shockwave grenades were just way too reliable. Ergo, I didn't use the mask much at all, but I think it was a neat addition. We also got these sprite things that scurried around the map. The wind one was a pocket launch pad and the water one healed you. Not bad. Handing them over to a shrine granted more loot. Neat. There were also these stationary earth sprites you could feed a random item and have them possibly barf out something better. Cool, I don't know! I feel like I have to talk about sprites because they were new this season, but I don't know what to say. They weren't awesome or anything, but they weren't annoying either. There's nothing profound to be said. They were perfectly fine additions to the game, though I wasn't shedding a tear if they disappeared forever. Godzilla was part of the battle pass because, of course he was, but the collaboration didn't stop at a skin. We also got this 2-week-long event where a lucky player could transform into him. I quickly got flashbacks of the Doom event from Chapter 5, but then I was like, wait, this is Godzilla. If a player were to become him, they would be huge targets way too slow to properly kill anything. And that's exactly how it was. There was also a built-in minigame where the player who damaged Godzilla the most would get a bunch of special loot. I think this was a neat little event. Definitely better than fighting Fortnite's version of Marvel 3 Doom. Oh yeah, the train. Let's talk about the train. What was this doing here? I hopped on with a friend on launch day and could not believe my eyes when I saw a train on this new map. I later hopped on with another friend, and they were just as perplexed as I was. Wait, the train's back? Yeah. Why? At least you didn't have to do any stupid quests related to it, as far as I remember. And it wasn't completely useless as you could get a mythic weapon out of the main chest. But none of that mattered. Chapter 5 soured my perception of a Fortnite train forever. Nobody cared about this thing after the first week back then, so why would you bring it back for Chapter 6? If there's another train in Chapter 7, I don't know what I'm gonna do to myself off camera. This thing is a complete waste of memory and processing power. No more trains, Epic Games, it's over. It got disabled during Season 3 and never moved again, so maybe they've finally learned their lesson. I hope. You know, there's this common sentiment that the second seasons of Fortnite chapters are always exceptional, especially compared to the first seasons, and I can see why people would believe that. Chapter 1 Season 2. Battle passes, tilted towers, mini shields, chug jugs, boogie bombs, impulse nades, lots of iconic additions. Chapter 2 Season 2. I mean, do I even have to say anything? Bosses that gave you mythics, vaults that had great loot, phenomenal battle pass, and while I kind of established I don't care too much for theming earlier, this season had a great theme. Chapter 2 Season 2 had an impeccable personality Epic Games hasn't been able to replicate since. It's the season that got me back into Fortnite. Chapter 3 Season 2. While I think this was where Fortnite started to go a bit downhill, there's no denying people loved finally not needing to be pro builders to play this game. There was definitely a huge spike in the player count at that time. Zero build is very much integral to this game now. Every time I log on, it always has more players on the main mode than build, at least in my server region. Chapter 4 Season 2. This one I have a little trouble seeing considering Season 1 of this chapter is one of my favorites, but the Kinetic Blade was awesome, and the Havoc Pump was awesome. Chapter 5 Season 2. Worst chapter of Fortnite so far, but the second season of it was no doubt the most tolerable. Now that brings us to this chapter Season 2. I think it sucked. But they brought Midas back for the 100th time! The pickle was a rapper! They brought vaults back! The theming of this season was so good! It's just like Chapter 2 Season 2! Pfft, yeah right! This season was even less like Chapter 2 Season 2 than Chapter 4 Season 4 was. Anyway, breaking into vaults was the gimmick of the season. Not original, but it's alright. The game's over 8 years old, I'm fine with recycled concepts. However, they put a spin on it that just made it boring. In Chapter 2 Season 2 and Chapter 4 Season 4, you had to infiltrate a vault location, locate a boss, kill it for a vault keycard, then get all the crazy good loot from said vault, all the while dealing with henchmen and real players along the way. Those were intense, high-energy events. I of course had tons of fun doing them in Chapter 2 Season 2. I may not have liked Chapter 4 Season 4, but I will admit its vault locations were where most of the fun was had. This time, there were no keycards. Instead, you had to find thermite, a new explosive item, and secure it to a vault door. When this was done, you were put through a long segment where waves of henchmen spawned in while you waited for the thermite to blow up the door. Why did this take so long? Was thermite that useless? Yes, I know weak points would appear on the vault door that you'd pickaxe to speed up the process, but it still took a little too long even when my teammates and I were hitting them non-stop. This whole process just got old way too quickly. I didn't want to do this all the time like I did in previous seasons. I didn't care if these vaults were the only places you could get dilbits from, currency required to purchase special items and weapons from the black markets. And sure, I could have just avoided going to them. It's not like you have to interact with the season's gimmick to play the game, but I swear there were always some quests to make you go to them, like actually breaking open the vaults, or killing henchmen that were abundant at those vaults, or whatever. Also, the changes to the map this season were a bit lame. That whole chunk they added to the left side of the map was plain depressing. The entirety of Season 1's map was so vibrant. This new chunk from Season 2 was full of dark greens and browns, lots of grays, and gold streaks haphazardly splattered everywhere. It was just kind of ugly. I felt like I was in Chapter 5 walking through this part of the map. That being said, I don't think this change was anywhere near as bad as the huge jungle Epic Games smacked onto the middle of the Chapter 4 map though. Then there were the new POIs themselves. At least Crime City and Lone Wolf Lair had vaults to distract you. But Shiny Shafts? Outlaw Oasis? Who went there? It's natural for a POI introduced in one season to lose relevancy when we move on to the next season, especially when they're literally made worse by the developers to take attention away from them for newer locations. But these two places were dead during their own season. They were about as desolate as Cuddle Campground and the Joneses from Chapter 3. I bet more people went to Moisty Mire back in Chapter 1. Okay, that's definitely a stretch. I think the best addition this season was Gold Rush. Gold splashes and the rivers and ore chunks on the left side of the map granted the effect, which was just faster movement speed and faster pickaxing. It's always nice to have some additional movement in the game, however minor it may be. Anyway, the player count must have been dropping since the start of the chapter because I got a strange ad for Fortnite on YouTube during the first week of this season. It's not uncommon to see advertisements for Fortnite, especially when a new season begins. Normally, they're just shortened versions of their extremely unrealistic, ultra-choreographed gameplay trailers. This time, however, on top of that type of ad, I came across another that could be best described as desperate. This wasn't some fake scam ad. This was from the official Fortnite YouTube account, meaning it's an unlisted video on their channel no average Joe can get their hands on. I was really bummed I didn't screen record it at the time, but when I told my friend about it, they clutched up and got it for me. So hell yeah, I don't have to describe what I remember and can just play it. I feel like I'm adding a ton of hype and suspense to this, but it's really not that crazy. It was just laughably pathetic. Here it is.
Oh my, look at it. Oh, it looks really awesome.
Bro, look at that. Oh my gosh, bro.
Wait, is this gonna be like the thing from... Yeah!
Wait, the AUG is back. The Striker Burst is back.
Oh my gosh.
That's actually heat. I love this. Listen, W.
Oh my god.
They cooked so hard this season.
Oh my, look at it. Oh, it looks really awesome.
Of course the ad starts off with typical gamer. That guy is like the king of hamming things up.
All right, here goes nothing.
Bro! 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 Look at that! Oh my gosh, bro.
Okay, this guy. He literally just glided from the battle bus, looked at the Wolfhead Mountain, and went, "Bro, that is sick!" Like, what? That's a clip you went with, Epic Games? A guy fawning over some environment art? That's not convincing anyone to try your game out. Whoa, they got burgers and chicken wings in this gas station? Yo, that's sick! You should totally play this season and use creator code NiftyDrifter in the item shop.
Wait, is this gonna be like the thing from...
Jesus Christ, these guys are screaming like they got sent flying in real life.
Is this gonna be like the thing from...
Wait, the AUG is back. The Striker Burst is back.
Oh my gosh.
I don't remember this part. This chick literally just goes, "Oh my gosh." And that's the whole clip. Would it have killed them to increase her volume at least? Bro!
Oh my gosh.
What's with this one frame at the start of her clip? It's from a completely different scene. Come on, editor, what are you doing?
That's actually heat. That's actually heat. That's actually heat. That's actually heat. I love this. Listen, W.
Ugh! That got like a visceral reaction out of me.
Oh my god.
This is the guy from earlier. I'd understand if his two clips were separate reactions to different things, but this latter clip is from the exact same moment the guy picked up the Striker Burst. He just makes it seem like the intern editing this didn't want to find another clip and split up an existing one to make the compilation seem more varied. It didn't work, by the way. It just made it more awkward.
They cooked so hard this season.
Let's try the cello. Like I said, it's very good.
So yeah, that was the advertisement. Really, really bad. Rather than being a showcase of cool gameplay or fancy cinematics to potentially intrigue viewers, it was a compilation of random streamers bootlicking. Because they were so busy gassing up the game, their actual gameplay had nothing going on. They were either just aimlessly moving or standing around a pile of loot after a fight. No real engaging gameplay to attract anybody. I get it's trying to advertise solely through word of mouth, but these streamers have been playing Fortnite for a living for years. Of course they're gonna be like, "Oh my god, I love this. This a W." They cooked this season. If I were a new player who was somehow foolishly convinced into playing Fortnite by this ridiculous ad, I'd probably quit after playing for a bit because that advertisement left out one little thing that made Chapter 6 Season 2 absolutely unbearable. It'd make sense to discuss it in a later segment, so I'll refrain from talking about it right now. You can probably already guess if you played during this time. The ability to buy reboot cards was added during this season, and has been in the game since. I think this feature was a mistake. In Fortnite, if you're in a team and die, you drop a reboot card. If your teammates pick it up, they can go to one of the many reboot vans around the map and bring you back to life. With the addition of buying reboot cards, one no longer has to pick them up and can just go straight to a reboot van, buy the cards there, and reboot from that same van. I grew to hate this very much. The only reason I can see this feature existing is to prevent card camping. But why would that need a counter? Was it that big a problem? This doesn't really mean much since it's obviously different for everyone, but in my personal experience, card camping is exceedingly rare. You'd have to be matched up with the most depraved people constantly for this to be relevant. You solve a likely small issue with buying reboot cards, but introduce the even bigger issue of players running away the second their friends die and getting a successful reboot off far away with little to no effort. As far as I remember, in all those years before Chapter 6, I ran into dedicated card campers maybe less than 10 times. Now my friends and I almost take out entire teams and helplessly watch as their last guy books it to the other side of the map almost every game. Sometimes, the last guy isn't even anywhere near the fight, so they're able to reboot kilometers away from us not even 20 seconds after we killed their friends. A complete waste of our heals and ammo. It's annoying. This tactical retreating and splitting up, they're obnoxious habits players have fallen into because of this reboot card buying feature. It's cheap, both figuratively and literally. 500 gold to revive up to 3 teammates? Seriously? It should be 500 per teammate. It's the least they could do to balance this out, especially since there's nothing else to spend gold on in this game anymore. Vending machines? NPC services? Who's using these? The stuff they provide is so naturally abundant now, these services are too minor a convenience to waste gold on. I don't need your shockwaves. I don't need this purple shotgun. The only time you ever see me spending gold on these things is when there's a higher NPCs quest or the general spend bars quest. If Epic Games had telemetry on how gold is being spent, I would not be surprised if the data visualization looked like this, with reboot cards winning by a huge margin. The only issue with making reboot cards 500 gold each is that there would have to be a way to choose who you want to reboot. If you have 3 reboot cards but only 1000 gold, you'd have to pick 2 out of the 3 teammates you want to resurrect. I can see a little UI element to select whom you'd want to reboot popping up when you interact with a van, but I can understand if something like that can feel overcomplicated. Anyway, I'd love for buying reboot cards to not exist anymore, but I'm sure it's not going anywhere. If we can't flat out remove buying them, here's a possible solution. Make them purchasable only after they expire. Reboot cards currently stay on the map for 4.5 minutes. That's almost a quarter of an average match. No way your opponents would be so lacking in a father figure to camp cards that long. With this restriction in place, you'd be incentivized to possibly retrieve the cards, as it'd be much quicker and possibly more engaging than just waiting it out. If you really can't get the cards, then fine. Wait the 4.5 minutes out and buy them. Also, maybe don't let players reboot at the same van they just bought the cards from. Generating those reboot cards should run that thing's battery out as if it just rebooted a player, forcing you to run to another van. Essentially, the process of buying players' reboot cards should not be an effortless task. If you're on a team fighting another team, and that opposition starts killing off your teammates one by one, it's naturally supposed to get harder and harder to survive. It's not impossible to win a 1v4, but it's not supposed to be highly likely. Really, the match should be over for you and your friends, but Fortnite is generous enough to allow you to revive them with their reboot cards. However, you need to actually go to where each teammate died to pick up these cards, and you're expected to meet some resistance. Maybe you have to constantly avoid gunfire from the opposing team as you run to each of your dead friends' loot piles. Maybe you did get your friends' cards and made your escape, but are constantly being chased by the team that nearly killed you. Or maybe you are dealing with degenerate card campers who won't piss off. It's not supposed to be easy, nor entirely fair. If you do miraculously get your friends' reboot cards and escape through the skin of your teeth, you're not entirely out of the woods yet because you can easily get jumped by other teams on the map as you make your way to a reboot van, which will similarly not be easy to survive since you're alone. If you successfully reached a van and start rebooting, you're alerting everyone nearby with those lights and loud sounds coming from the van. Not to mention that reboot progress meter accumulates slower the less living teammates you have to help out, giving opposing teams ample time to stop you from pulling off the reboot. If you manage to get this far and reboot all your teammates, you're still not in a favorable position. Rebooted teammates spawn in with nothing but a gray pistol, and if a team were to bust in a little late, your newly revived friends aren't going to easily fend them off with this pissy little weapon. However, if you and your friends are safe and alive after all that, there's still more to do. In all the time that's elapsed since your teammates died, everyone else who wasn't preoccupied with trying to reboot has been steadily getting stronger through fighting and finding better loot. You guys will most likely be stuck with scraps other teams left behind, which could cause issues in late-game confrontations. From the moment your first teammate gets knocked, the game is designed to be against you every step of the way. Sure, buying reboot cards merely circumvents one part of the bringing your teammates back to a comfortable position process, but that is arguably the most integral and difficult part, rightfully so. It should not be completely trivialized. All in all, if we make reboot cards only purchasable after they expire, make them cost 500 gold each instead of in total, and force players to use 2 vans in the process, I think the feature would be much less abused and maintain the intensity and tedium rebooting teammates should have to an extent. Without proper playtesting, however, we won't know for sure.
Big booty women. Big booty women. Big booty women.
Lawless was nearing its end, and I was so ready to move on. I'm in the middle of a session with some friends, and one of them tells me we're going to have one of those month-long mini-seasons next, like Chapter 1 OG and Chapter 2 Remix, but it was going to be Star Wars themed. When I heard that last part, the boo-omp sound effect played in my head. If you saw the Chapter 5 video, you know how I feel about collabs. I think they can be good in moderation, especially if they make sense to include in a game like this, but Fortnite has a new collaboration like every week now, and they're almost always something dumb. However, if it's just skins and other cosmetics with the occasional fun item thrown into the Battle Royale map, then it ultimately doesn't matter. It's easy to ignore that stuff. Sort of. You know what's not though? An entire season dedicated to a third-party franchise. At least this Star Wars season was just a single month, but who's to say we won't get another absolute doom in the future? I didn't care about the Marvel season in Chapter 2 because I hadn't really developed an opinion on collaborations at the time. By Chapter 5, I was like, man, I'm getting sick of everyone and their grandma getting thrown into Fortnite like it's some Smash Ultimate everyone is here type thing. I liked when Fortnite was just a cartoony shooting game with some silly looking characters mixed in with the standard soldiers. The more unnecessary collaborations it gets, the further the game's identity is diluted. Anyway, what's the purpose of doing all this? To boost the player count, of course. Collaborations are so superficial though, it only does so temporarily. Maybe some of those people you got to try out the game because you added their favorite anime skin stick around, but most are likely to drop it once they realize, wait, I was never interested in playing this game for its gameplay. I only got it to buy this skin. Man, that was shallow of me. I'm gonna go do something I actually want to do now. People will argue, oh, well, collabs are the only reason this game's still alive. And wow, talk about having no faith in this game at all. Did you know Fortnite had its lowest player count in 2 years during this Star Wars season? I guess collabs aren't a surefire way to attract players after all. Alright, that's enough ranting. Even though I don't like Star Wars, I must admit this was a decent season. Nothing too crazy was going on, especially compared to what transpired earlier. The loot pool was nothing but energy-based Star Wars weapons, which meant you didn't have to collect any ammunition the entire month. Now, I'm not the kind of guy to run out of ammo mid-match since I'm opening every ammo box I find, but not having to worry about ammo at all from the start of a game was strangely refreshing. The only thing I found a little annoying this season was getting shot at by someone in those TIE fighters and X-Wings. Shield bubbles were kind of a must-have during this time because of them. The people that got in these things in my lobbies usually tried to run away the second they started getting shot down from a distance, so maybe if I had some more brazen drivers in my lobbies, I'd have had a bigger problem with these ships. In terms of map changes, we got 4 Star Wars locations. I didn't think I'd care for any of them after clearing the map, but I must say I was a fan of Outpost Enclave. Now that I think about it, this was the perfect season for all those YouTubers to do the 4-corner challenge in Fortnite, because those new locations were actually located at the corners of the map. There was an event later in the season similar to the Godzilla one where you could get into a Star Destroyer. The ship flew over the map in a random straight line, and you could blast away anything below you. Because of the predetermined path, anyone who wasn't lucky enough to get the Star Destroyer could easily just walk far enough away to avoid dying. It was definitely a lot more restricted than Godzilla, but still pretty cool. Oh, and I can't forget about AI Darth Vader. Poor guy got lobotomized, so I couldn't get him to say anything too crazy, but it was still fun hearing him blurt stuff out.
Tina, your grasp of the Force has potential. I will lead this squad. Victory will be assured, or you will face my displeasure. Tina, your shot at such a distance shows a dedication to ranged combat. Such pronouncements are unexpected, Tina. If we eliminate these targets, I shall consider this Baba Booey. I sense a kindred spirit in you, Tina. The ability to cause controlled destruction is a power coveted by few. Ensure that gas tank does not impede combat readiness, Tina.
What?
Tina's headshot demonstrates a keen eye and satisfactory aim. Perhaps there is hope for you yet, apprentice. Tina is under attack. Find cover quickly. Tina, unleash your fury upon these enemies. Show them the true meaning of K.A. Boon. Tina's enthusiasm is notable. So, the visual appeal of Tina, combined with her theoretical grenade proficiency, elevates her on your list, player 2.
I am Patrick Man, defender of Bikini Bottom!
Season 3 was superhero themed. In the Star Wars End of Season event, when your character crashed onto the island, it showed them infused with some kind of purple electricity. Clearly, we got superpowers of some kind. So what did we do with them? Well, seemingly nothing. Superpowers were merely obtained through use of peripherals, like gloves and capes.
Power's all in the costume.
The only thing that makes sense to be an ingrained superpower is the ranking system. Start a game out on the lowest rank, then do all kinds of things throughout the match to increase it. Every time you ranked up, health and shields would gradually replenish for a time, and boons were enhanced. I haven't talked about boons yet because I wanted to do so in more detail later, but I kind of have to here. Boons were just perks, like augments in Chapter 4, but you could get them as drops through chests or other means. There was a boon this season that marked opponents who shot you, so enhancing this meant opponents would stay marked longer. Honestly, I spent the entirety of this season not fully understanding how hero ranks worked. Why? Because I couldn't be bothered to read. Sure, I knew about the health and shield regeneration, but that's because I very clearly saw that in action and was able to connect its occurrence to ranking up. I never realized boons were enhanced until just now when I looked at some of my gameplay and saw it straight up tells you boons enhanced on the UI. This is reminding me of that Boondock scene C-Day put in his last video when he didn't know how to switch seats in a vehicle.
Okay, can I switch seats? Can I switch seats?
Read, nigga, read!
Not only were these boons slightly adjusted for each rank, reaching rank S gave them even stronger bonuses. I would check my map and sometimes have storm forecast, but not know why. Looking at my gameplay, the Stormcaller boon literally said, grant storm forecast at rank S when picked up.
Read!
Anyway, there was still one more rank above S, S+. Reaching it granted you every boon you didn't already have, making you the strongest you could ever be. But I mostly got to S+ super late into a game, so I didn't get too much use out of it. All in all, I think this hero rank thing was a good mechanic. Sure, I didn't fully understand it until, months after Season 3 ended, but that's partly the reason it's good. One didn't have to understand it to benefit from it. It was a passive thing that naturally got better the more you just played the game. It's also cool that it wasn't wholly dependent on skill. Yeah, if you were super aggressive, getting tons of kills, your rank was going up faster than most players in your lobby. But the rank itself didn't actually do anything useful long term unless you had boons, which had to be found. If you had no boons at rank S, you were no different than a rank C player. However, if you were really good and could get to S+ quickly, you were appropriately rewarded all the boons for your efforts. Once again, good mechanic. Let's move on. When I first played this season, I couldn't find shockwaves for the life of me.
I'm not seeing enough movement!
I thought there had to be something wrong with the game until my friends found out you could actually launch yourself with those base boost gauntlets. We eventually found shockwaves, so it was clear they were just made extremely rare to promote use of this new movement option. I think they made for an interesting change of pace. Shockwaves are extremely easy to use. Just look straight down, throw them at your feet, move a little forward, jump, and you get sent flying. The base boost gauntlets, on the other hand, required you to face away from where you wanted to go, then jump, and finally launch yourself. On top of that, there was a slight equip delay to prevent you from quickly blasting off. I'm sure people can get frustrated when someone just shockwaves away when they were super close to dying, so making the overwhelmingly dominant movement item something that makes players slightly slower to act on an escape definitely alleviates some of that frustration. I liked these gauntlets. They were quite fun, though it was a bit rough getting stuck with a blue rarity one since it only had 2 charges. Now, if I were some nerd who didn't care for the little identity that remained of Fortnite, I would have been like, since we already have Superman and Robin, wouldn't it be cool if, instead of these music gauntlets, Epic Games just threw in a Batman Beyond collab and made them Shriek sound gauntlets? Sure, he never propelled himself in the show, but there's nothing wrong with taking some creative liberties. There was a visor item that allowed you to mark nearby opponents and even see their footprints, which seemed a little excessive, but still pretty cool. I didn't use it a ton, but one of my friends did, and during one game, he marks 2 people, and the silhouettes very clearly depicted a knocked player getting emoted on. When I saw that, I was like, oh my god, I gotta kill this guy and emote on him. After a bit of resistance, I get him.
There's the emote, there it is!
Dude deserved it. I looked back at the replay, and he did nothing worth emoting for. These are the kinds of degenerates that would emote in real life after swatting a fly or something. To whoever that knocked player was, you're welcome. I avenged you. Oh, we also got a couple new sprites like the Superman sprite, which I never used, and the Sidekick sprite, which gave you 0-point dashes. Super useful, but why did the dashes not prevent fall damage? I don't remember if they did back when they were introduced in Chapter 2 Season 5, but they did during Chapter 5 when they were skull dashes, so now I just expect them to be that way every time 0-point dashes come back in some way. Eventually, just like Godzilla and the Star Destroyer, something appeared on the map that could turn you into Superman. Can anyone tell me if this was good? I never got it. You weren't a slow towering monster or a giant ship locked into moving in one direction. You were a tall humanoid able to freely move around. So my initial thought was, okay, Epic Games didn't learn their lesson from Dr. Doom after all, and I'm about to be bodied by Superman. But everyone in my lobbies who got this seemed to go completely brain dead since it was all likely their first times using it. Season 4 took some inspiration from Starship Troopers and had us fight off giant alien bugs. There were some new locations infested with them, and I was immediately reminded of the cube monsters from Season 6. But it's been so long since then, I don't really remember if those guys were super annoying, so I guess I shouldn't even try to compare. These bugs were frail, barely did any damage, and were also kind of dumb. But they were a bit troublesome when I was trying to deal with real players and couldn't get these creatures off my back. The ranking system persisted, but it was simplified in that ranking up only summoned a drop pod of loot for you. Obviously, the higher the rank, the better the loot. At the start of the season, shockwave grenades were everywhere. And I mean everywhere. They weren't super rare like they were in Season 3, so the drop rate was clearly back to normal. That's all we really needed, but for some reason these drop pods gave you tons of them. Kit's shockwave launcher also came back, but as a standard item in the loot pool. It was shockwaves galore.
I'm seeing enough movement!
They toned everything down after a couple weeks though. Here's a random small thing I don't think I'll be able to mention any other time. There were these bug nests on stems that aim assist really wanted you to look at early in the season. It kind of screwed me up during fights. Why can't aim assist be that strong when I'm actually trying to hit people? Oh yeah, there was a mysterious obelisk on the map during this season. Was it significant to the story or something? No, you idiot! It was just an ad for a Daft Punk collab. They eventually added some concert map, and instead of only being able to select it from the lobby, you could also hop into the experience by interacting with the obelisk mid-match. Chests and other loot lined the perimeter of the obelisk, but once this thing was activated, you could not interact with any of that stuff. Attempting to do so would just open a "leave the match and enter the Daft Punk map" prompt. Collabs can be pretty annoying, but this is on another level. This one straight up impeded gameplay. My friends and I had an endgame once where this thing was in zone, and we were kind of low on heals and stuff, so it would have been nice to pick up the shields around the obelisk. If one of us was knocked and had to get revived, we needed to crawl far enough away so the revive could actually be done. What were they thinking? Why not make it so that you actually had to look directly at the object to interact with it? The Power Rangers were here for some reason, so we had yet another one of those mid-season events, this time involving the Megazord. It was admittedly pretty hype seeing our characters posing and hopping into the mech.
God, this is so
Clip it. Yeah,
Fortnite
clip
is
it.
so fucking weird, dude.
God damn. Damn, it looks so good doing that animation.
Before wreaking havoc on the map, you first had to take out a giant bug. With the Megazord being so large, just like Godzilla, nobody was really dying to this thing unless they had a death wish and walked right up to it. This was the last of those transformation events. Overall, they were fine. I really don't have a strong opinion on these, which is why I didn't have much to say other than just, they were a thing and this is how they worked. I'm not going to be like, oh my god guys, this was the sickest thing in Fortnite since the Zappatron, because they weren't super exciting and I ultimately didn't care. If they never did stuff like this again, I'd be fine. Anyway, I just didn't want these events to be like Dr. Doom in Chapter 5, where the transformation was like a near-guaranteed victory royale because it was so strong in any random person's hands. Luckily, none of them were like that at all. Again, not entirely sure about the Superman one, maybe it was a bit strong, but I'll never truly know. With the bugs defeated thanks to the Power Rangers, not OXR, the island was now at peace, which meant it was time for more collaborations. These K-pop demon hunter chicks showed up out of nowhere. Why?
Money!
At least I finally understood why the Battle Pass had a K-pop girl in it for seemingly no reason. It was foreshadowing. I must admit though, these chicks do have some fairly cool designs, and they match Fortnite's art style surprisingly well. Anyway, the K-pop chicks didn't stick around too long since Fortnitemares was right around the corner. I honestly don't care too much about Fortnitemares. It's not like it's some super awesome annual event or anything. I'm not anxiously anticipating what's to come in this game during the Halloween season. This Fortnitemares was a bit boring, but I can't definitively say if the previous few were any better since I don't remember them all too well. I do remember Chapter 1's because of the cube monsters as well as Chapter 2's because of the ghosts, which got me some really high kill games back then, but I don't think we'll ever have crazy Fortnitemares like those again. It is worth mentioning Epic Games did put a bit into this. Sure, we had the obligatory changes to the main map, but Reload got an entirely new one added, which was pretty cool. They also gave us quite a few Halloween-themed skins, and that's not even mentioning the insane number of collabs they introduced. You know, like Jason Voorhees, Ghostface,
Doja Cat?
Now that's the scariest one of them all. We also got Scooby-Doo and the rest of the gang, and I'm speechless, man. When I logged in with my friends around this time, one of them checked the item shop and was like, So, was Scooby-Doo not in the game before? Which I think goes to show just how much third-party junk is in Fortnite. My friend was under the impression Scooby-Doo had already been added before. I will say though, the Scooby snacks were a great addition. They healed you a bit and gave you the slap effect for some time, while also playing the Hanna-Barbera running sound. There were also just a ton of Scooby snacks in just one box. You could get a lot of mileage out of that item.
Feels like I'm wearing nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all.
Stupid sexy Flanders!
2 Marvel seasons, a Star Wars mini-season, and now a Simpsons mini-season. Disney has Epic Games by the balls, and Epic Games is like, yeah, I'm into that. I feel like I can definitively say, although I don't like Star Wars, that I kind of liked the Star Wars mini-season. I was feeling a bit conflicted about this season though. As much as I don't like most collabs, if you're going to make an entire season revolve around one, making a whole map based on the collab over just having 1 or 2 new POIs in the main one is actually pretty cool. This miniature Springfield was quite enjoyable. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, but I wasn't sure what it was. I talked to a friend about it, and he said I probably feel that way because we didn't have any crazy things that obnoxiously increased tension in the game for once, and that made a lot of sense. The gameplay this season has been so normal, and I say has been because I'm recording in the middle of it, because there aren't any Typhoon Blades, Storm Beast Pom-Poms, flying ships, bug swarms, or some other ridiculous thing to briefly spike your blood pressure. With Fortnite having been around so long, Epic Games feels the need to add things to change up the gameplay, but they're not always the best. With how often they do it, you just come to expect craziness every time a new season starts. When I played this Simpsons season, however, I found the matches I was in to be pretty chill. There were tense moments, of course, but there wasn't some annoyance that made certain interactions suddenly go from 0 to 100, forcing you to unnecessarily exert yourself. As much as I say I like when Fortnite is simple, I had honestly forgotten what truly simple gameplay felt like over the past several months. Back in Chapter 4, I had gotten sick of Season 4's hyper-fast gameplay. When we were then thrown into the much simpler Chapter 1 OG, everything felt normal again. This Simpsons mini-season is similar to that OG mini-season in that sense. The only negative to come from this is the fact that it's clear this is only the beginning of Epic Games putting us through month-long collab seasons, especially with franchises that aren't combat-focused. I would not be surprised if we got some SpongeBob mini-season this summer, where the map is Bikini Bottom and we get a loot pool with bubble wands, Man Ray's Power Glove, and Krabby Patties you can eat for health. Anyway, this Springfield map was noticeably smaller than the one we had been on the past year. Because of this, we actually had 80-player max games, which was great. My friends and I ran into much fewer bots than usual. Though, I guess it's not just the lower player cap, but also the fact that this was a new season, and also Simpsons themed, which likely increased the player count a bit. For a while now, I've held the opinion that Fortnite should lower the player cap on their main mode. I get Battle Royale is synonymous with 100-player games, but who are we kidding? No matter what Fortnite does to try bringing in more players, we're going to have bots regardless. Why not just remove some slots to ensure less bots get put in our matches? I was originally thinking 75-player games, but that's not divisible by 2 and 4, so maybe 80 should be the new standard for now. Alright, let's get back to The Simpsons. Although I don't have much to say since, again, it's a pretty simple season. There were these repeatable lost and found quests you could do on the map, like finding Lisa's books, collecting certain items for Marge, and so on. Completing them netted you some decent loot, so they were definitely worth doing if you ever came across them. I avoided Homer's keys at all costs though. For that quest, you had to get into a vehicle and do something with it, but finding a vehicle was probably the hardest thing to do this season since they were so sparse. And I'm not one of those weirdos who memorize the locations of random things on the map like that. They introduced donut storms, which were pretty goofy I guess. These giant falling donuts did 100 damage if they fell on you, which was crazy, and if you survived, you could partake of the chests attached to some of them. Funny anomaly, but gameplay-wise, I think the tornadoes and lightning storms from Chapter 3 were more interesting weather events. I bet these storms could have been fairly stressful if you were fighting others during them, but I only ever got into fights after they subsided. They added a Blinky Fish consumable that gave you the 0-point dash ability, but it didn't prevent fall damage here. I'm tired of learning this the hard way. That's all that came to mind for the 6 seasons. Maybe I missed a few things, I don't really care. Let's go ahead and rank them from worst to best, then move on. Coming in at the very bottom at number 6 is Season 2. Lame seasonal gimmick, lame map changes, and a horrible item that held this whole season hostage. Again, I'll talk about it later. It introduced buying reboot cards, which wasn't a problem at all during this season since it was new, but it's gotten really annoying since then. What a great legacy Lawless has left behind. At number 5, we have Season 4. I feel kind of bad putting this so low, but the bug stuff wasn't all that interesting in the end. Fortnitemares was kind of boring, and that's all there really was. I found other seasons this chapter more engaging. Number 4 is Season 1. It was a sufficient season to start off the chapter. Decent loot pool, pretty map, don't know what else to say. We got some mostly useless movement mechanics here, but at least the wall scramble was great. If there's anything Chapter 6 should be remembered for, it's that it gave us the wall scramble. I'm gonna put Season 3 at number 3. Hero rank was a decent mechanic that didn't change the game a ton, base boost gauntlets were a fresh but familiar movement option, loot pool was pretty good, save for a couple things, and that's really all there is to it. At number 2, we have the Star Wars mini-season. Again, I don't like Star Wars, but the mini-season was fairly solid. I surprisingly look back on it fondly. If Epic Games had made up their own sci-fi theme for this season instead, I would have liked it even more. Anyway, I liked the influence on the gameplay via the all Star Wars loot pool with weapons that didn't need ammo. AI Vader was also pretty fun. The only annoying thing to deal with this season was a ship blasting you from the sky, but that didn't happen too often for me. Number 1 is obviously the last option left, The Simpsons. Absolutely the most chill season this chapter gameplay-wise. Again, I'd rather they not do collab seasons, but I like that they went all out for once by making an entire Springfield map. And, you know, I like The Simpsons. At least, liked them before they started sucking. Now, don't get it twisted. This list is not an indication I'm warming up to collaborations. These mini-seasons just had some simplicity the standard seasons kind of lacked. I would obviously prefer Epic Games maintain this simplistic gameplay while putting effort into something more original. All in all, Fortnite Chapter 6 was okay. Leagues better than Chapter 5 for sure. If I'm to place this in my current chapter's ranked list, I'd have to put it in 4th place. I have a feeling Epic Games may never be able to break through the top 3. If a future chapter is ever just decent, they'll probably just get thrown somewhere in that spot between chapters 4 and 3. They'd have to screw up majorly to get any lower. This probably didn't need its own segment, but I think boons are unique enough to get one. Like I mentioned back when I discussed Season 3, boons were items you could find around the map, and picking them up gave you special abilities. Think Chapter 4 augments but in a collectible form. I liked boons because there was literally no downside to picking them up. No matter how much you thought a boon's effect might have sucked, if it popped out of a chest, you were picking it up. It's not like you had limited slots for them like you did augments. You could have one of every boon available during a season. On top of that, boons also fused with your character. You couldn't drop them voluntarily, nor could they be taken from you upon elimination. So, why not pick one up? It'll only help you, and you're preventing someone else from benefiting from it. Usefulness obviously varied among boons, but there was never one that felt too strong. Season 1 had 4 boons. Fire increased reload speed. Pretty standard. Wind increased your movement speed while your pickaxe was equipped. Better movement's always great, and it's cool that this one comes with the caveat of needing the harvesting tool in hand, something you most likely aren't switching to in the middle of a gunfight. Water healed you and friends nearby if you were in a body of, well, water. Yeah, this is one of the more useless boons we got. I'm sure it had its moments though. Surprisingly, the wiki says this got vaulted in competitive modes. What the hell were sweats doing with this thing? Was it just good for healing strats or something? Void marked opponents nearby when you knocked or killed someone. Now that is a good boon. This would have been a great augment in Chapter 4. Storm Mark was awesome, but I'd say it was a bit too strong since you just had to hide around and wait for the storm to finish moving to get a lay of the land. Having to actually engage and defeat someone to know if anyone else is nearby is more balanced. I feel like saying Season 2's boons were the weakest batch of the chapter, but that's because I'm only thinking of the 2 gold-related ones. The gold ammo boon gave you extra ammunition when picking up gold bars, while the greed boon granted more gold from chests and eliminations. Sounds fine, right? Players come across gold all the time. Well, there was an excess of gold this season. You could get to 5,000 bars easily after visiting a vault 2 or 3 times. When you're maxed out, you can't pick up any more gold, meaning these boons do nothing. I said earlier I don't believe there's anything really useful to spend gold on in this game anymore, so of course, I'm not really spending much. If I'm maxed out though, I might as well drop my gray hollow twister and buy the gold one in the black market, right? Well, when I contemplate doing something like that, 90% of the time I end up telling myself, no, what if I could use that gold for something better later? But then that brings us back to nothing really useful existing to begin with. So I end up in this infinite recursion that leads to me hoarding my gold. Let's move on to the other boons. The Gold Rush boon gave you the Gold Rush effect when opening containers. Another movement-related one, cool. The Adrenaline Rush boon gave you the slap effect when mantling, hurdling, and wall jumping. Also cool. That leaves us with the Vulture boon, which I found quite unique. It marks the locations of eliminated players on the map briefly, and that's good intel. If you're aggressive as hell, now you can book it to that location for a potential kill. If you want to play it safe, you can stay away from the general location of the mark for a while, or be extra wary of a potential confrontation when entering. Overall, pretty cool boon. I'd say Season 3's boons were the most interesting of the chapter since they were directly tied to the hero rank system. The higher the rank, the stronger their effects, and at S+, you got them all. Stormcaller had to have a high drop rate or something. Looking at all my saved gameplay, it was almost always the only one I had before reaching S+. This boon replenished shields while in the storm. For how often I had it, I never got much use out of it. I can see it being helpful if a player were getting into fights in the storm, and while that's not an uncommon occurrence, most people avoid this as much as possible. A fight itself is enough to deal with, players don't need the storm third-partying them. The best thing about the Stormcaller boon was its S-rank bonus, which was Storm Forecast, an ever-useful perk in this game. Way more helpful than replenishing shield in the storm. This disparity kind of reminds me of like a Magikarp evolving into Gyarados. Anyway, it's always nice to see Epic Games writing in unique ways to get Storm Forecast. I've always hated Forecast Towers. Combat Acrobat partially reloaded your weapons when parkouring, which I guess means mantling, wall scrambling, and boosted jumping. Because I'm almost always hyper aware of my ammo situation, I got very little use out of this boon the few times I had it. If I fire one inconsequential shot at someone too far away to engage, I'm reloading that one bullet before doing anything else. So, if I ever did have this boon and mantled, it likely didn't do anything in the end because my mags were all full. It doesn't say if there's a cooldown, so I guess if you did tons of parkour moves in quick succession, your guns would rack up ammo in their mags pretty quickly. At rank S, rather than only the one gun you're holding partially reloading when parkouring, all guns in your inventory get ammo back. But who's ever recklessly running around with a ton of guns that aren't fully reloaded? Overall, this is a bit of a situational boon like Stormcaller, but at least Stormcaller's S-rank bonus was cool. Combat Acrobats is a mere expansion of the base perk, which isn't a bad thing, but the base perk sucks. I think this ultimately would have been a much more desirable boon if the S-rank bonus did more to that equipped weapon rather than just reloading more guns in your inventory. Speed Healer granted users the ability to sprint while using healing items and gave the slap effect as well. I think this was an interesting boon, but because we've been conditioned to barely move when healing in this game, I almost never thought to sprint while I had this. The only time I ever did was when I freaked the hell out after getting shot while drinking a chug jug. It was actually so funny. I wish I recorded my audio during it. Anyway, this boon's description is actually pretty confusing. It says you gain slap after consuming, which I assume meant when fully consuming a single healing item, but as you can see, I got slap when I started sprinting in the middle of drinking the chug jug. Then the rank S bonus says you gain slap immediately upon using an item. You mean like, the second I press the button to start using a heal, I get slap? If that's the case, doesn't this bonus kind of suck? It doesn't take long to start sprinting right after popping a heal? Maybe I'm misinterpreting? I don't know, man. All I do know is in that clip, I was rank A and got slap when I started sprinting while using the chug jug. Wouldn't it have been so much cooler if the bonus was infinite slap while bandages were equipped or something? When are you ever holding bandages in your hand? For that matter, when are you ever picking up bandages at all? Wouldn't it have been interesting if you felt the need to waste inventory space on some because you had this speed healer boon? Even if infinite slap is pretty good, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage by carrying the least useful healing item, as you'd basically have a 4-slot inventory. It's at least more debilitating than, say, carrying an exotic shotgun that gives the same effect. Heightened senses marked opponents that hit you, with S-rank lowering its cooldown. This was definitely the most influential of the 4. It's not situational in the slightest. It's always useful to know where your opponent is if you're shot at from afar. I definitely got some use out of it, and was also regularly on the receiving end as well. I vividly remember shooting at people and going, dang, I'm marked, they had that boon, and thinking how cool it was that, even though I may have dealt damage, I was potentially in more danger as a result. Honestly, that's really all I have to say. It's a great boon. I was looking at the wiki and saw a surging speed boon lumped in with the other 4 this season. I was like, I've never seen this before, but then found footage of me with it and remembered it was a boon you could get during the Superman event. Deal enough damage to whoever's controlling Superman, and you were granted it. Faster sprint and less stamina consumption is definitely a useful boon, especially with the rank S buff. The drop pods you got from ranking up in Season 4 gave you exclusive Super Soldier boons, with each one having more perks the better your rank was. Ranks B, A, and S all reduced stamina consumption. Ranks A and S additionally increased reload speed. Rank S also reduced weapon spread and recoil. If you picked up a higher ranked boon while carrying a lesser one, the latter was replaced. I'm not sure if that meant the buffs were combined though. With reduced stamina depletion being a prevalent perk among these boons, I was made much more aware of how fast the base consumption rate is. Running out of sprint was way easier to do and a bit more punishing this time around than any of the previous 3 chapters. I think it's time they just update sprinting to last longer. Everyone would benefit from that. Anyway, you could also reach S+ like in Season 3, and that ranks boon did the same things as the S one, but granted unlimited stamina and increased sprint speed. I'll just tell you straight up, I never saw this thing. I never got to S+ when OXR rank was around. I played decent games, but I guess my friends and I just weren't doing enough to rack up the points for it. As awesome as that boon sounds, it probably wasn't too crazy since it was naturally acquired super late into a match. The agile aiming boon reduced recoil and spread, and increased movement speed while ADSing. I guess this is what you'd get if you combined the vertical foregrip, laser sight, and speed grip from Chapter 5, except you change the laser sight so it only works while ADSing. I wonder if the reduced recoil and spread stacked with the rank S boon. There was also an extended magazine boon, self-explanatory, and a plain storm forecast one, the latter being exclusive to drop pods that spawned in after clearing a bug infestation from an OXR location. During the Megazord event, if you dealt enough damage to the mech, you could get a special boon, similar to Superman. This boon would passively give you medium, small, and shotgun ammo. I got this once, but before I even got to try it out, this happened.
Alright, I'm getting out. Wait, what the fuck?
Looking at my inventory, you can see the ammo slowly increasing on the shotgun. I guess a perk like that can be a little useful. That's every boon across the seasons. I have a feeling they may not stick around for Chapter 7. You could tell they were slowly being phased out by the end. There were maybe 2 still around by the end of Season 4, and they were pretty rare finds. Again, I liked this addition to the game, but if it's not around later, oh well. I started my Chapter 5 video talking about medallions, ending the segment saying I hoped they wouldn't persist into Chapter 6. To me, Fortnite's at its best when you don't feel obligated to go to any particular location for any particular item for a better chance of survival. You just check the battle bus path and base your decision off that. Sure, maybe you have a specific spot you like to go to most of the time, but you wouldn't be averse to going somewhere else if plans have to change. Ultimately, it shouldn't matter where you land, you'll get random loot like everyone else and hopefully get slightly better stuff as you explore further and get into fights. Medallions in Chapter 5 were generally not a big deal, but a select few made it harder to follow that sort of philosophy I just stated. While they did end up persisting into Chapter 6, they were much more dialed back. Season 1 had 3 medallions. Night Rose's was pretty decent, as it passively reloaded your equipped weapon. I jokingly brought up the idea of a no reload needed medallion in the previous video, and some people were like, "Bro predicted the Night Rose medallion!" No, I didn't! No reload needed meant no reload needed, like an infinite capacity magazine. With something like that, you could just spray your weapons endlessly without any interruption until you exhausted your ammo reserve. That is not how Night Rose's medallion worked. It gradually reloaded your gun in chunks. Spamming your weapons easily outpaced the effect. On top of that, if you emptied your mag, your character still had to go through the reload animation. So no, this was not the no reload needed medallion I was talking about. Shogun X's medallion made you partially invisible while running and granted infinite sprint. I will admit, I do think this one was a bit strong. It probably shouldn't have given infinite sprint. Not because it's overpowered or anything, but because it already had the invisibility aspect. This medallion felt like 2 medallions in one. Invisibility while sprinting? Yeah, that's an alright perk. It's at least better than only being invisible while crouching. But wait, how about we also throw in infinite sprint? Okay, now you're kind of overdoing it. You're adding a perk on top of a perk, and that second perk just so happens to make the first one not so weak. The downside to the invisibility is that you can only do it while sprinting, and a draining stamina meter ensures you won't be invisible too often. Adding infinite sprint just negates that entirely. That combination should be something players create on their own. For example, if the medallion didn't give infinite sprint and Slapjuice had been available during that season, players could combine the two for temporary infinite invisible sprinting. The only combination we did have was with the Typhoon Blade. That sword made you sprint faster, so you'd go zooming if you had that infinite sprint. So, how could we have resolved the Shogun X medallion concern? Add a lesser alternative. If Slapjuice had actually been added back during Season 1, this thing wouldn't have seemed nearly as strong because the rest of the lobby would have had their own infinite sprint, albeit temporary. That would have made this medallion like the Nitro one from Chapter 5 Season 3. If you thought the infinite sprint from that medallion was overpowered, well, I'm sorry, but you're dumb. Nitro was extremely abundant on the map then, so someone with infinite Nitro was not remotely difficult to deal with. Ultimately, I didn't have much of a problem with Shogun X's medallion. I just felt the infinite sprint was a bit much from a design perspective. If you were going to give it a secondary effect, it should have been slower stamina depletion at most. That way you couldn't run too far, even if it had been stacked with the reduced stamina consumption of the Typhoon Blade. Another thing to mention is those circles on the map, the ones that gave away the medallion wielder's general location. These were toned down as well. They used to be huge if you just had one medallion, but now they varied in size based on their usefulness, which was an appropriate change. I mentioned earlier how you could earn some special loot by damaging Godzilla the most during his event. A medallion was included. It gave you 0-point dashes just like the Cerberus medallion from Chapter 5 Season 2, so it was pretty decent. Like I said in the last video, I don't think the Cerberus medallion was overpowered. I don't believe the outcomes of the games I won would have been any different if I didn't have those dashes. I'm sure people would argue me 0-point dashing once randomly 5 minutes into a game caused a snowball effect that ultimately led to my victory, but that's a bit ridiculous. If the Cerberus medallion won people games, it's because those people utilized its perk exceptionally well in a way most players likely wouldn't. Anyway, I sadly never got to use Godzilla's medallion. The loot from the event would spawn right on top of the player when Godzilla died, and the one time I participated in the minigame and dealt the most damage, I was being chased by the Godzilla user's thirsty teammates. The stuff showed up during the chase, and I had shockwaved like a mile away, so those dorks ended up taking the medallion that was rightfully mine. I understand the loot spawning in that way, I wouldn't want my entire inventory suddenly replaced by a bunch of random stuff, but the medallion doesn't take up any space. Why couldn't that have just been auto-picked up by the victor? Shogun X was still on the floating island during Season 2, but this time he dropped the Super Shield medallion, which spawned shield bubbles when popping meds. Though a weak medallion I never once picked up, I think it was pretty cool. It's the only one that has a genuine caveat. The circle on the map is still not much to me. Yeah, it can be beneficial to get the extra cover when healing, but deploying a shield bubble easily gives away your location. Imagine getting lasered down to like 3 HP and running away to heal in peace, but your opponent keeps chasing you since they know you're low. You may have been able to escape them briefly, and in that time you could have popped minis or something, but doing so with this medallion would have exposed your location due to the shield bubble. The wolf dude, no I'm not looking up his name, dropped a medallion as well. It was basically a stripped Nitro medallion, as it gave you a faster sprint and the ram ability. But that was it. Not too bad, especially since stamina consumption was untouched. Eventually, Scorpion from Mortal Kombat was thrown onto the map, and he dropped a medallion that gave the first bullet in the mags of your guns an explosive effect. The extra damage it dealt was pretty good, but that first bullet caveat ensured it wasn't too strong. The Star Wars season introduced a medallion that reduced cooldowns and how much your guns heated up. A pretty no-brainer medallion for that season. I honestly never picked it up. I just knew those reductions were barely going to make a difference. It's not like I was going to be able to spam a blaster twice as long as the average player. Considering medallions are dropped by bosses, I feel this is the best time to bring this up. During this Star Wars season, a friend of mine received a questionnaire when she logged off Fortnite. Does this game have great boss battles? When I saw that screenshot, I was like, of course not. But 60% of participants said yes. Are they delusional?
Yes.
This game does not have great boss battles. It doesn't even have good ones. It honestly never did. It's hard not to think of bosses from other games when trying to answer this question. This isn't Mega Man, where bosses have different attacks you have to carefully navigate around whilst firing. This isn't Mario, where you have to bonk someone on the head 3 times and avoid attacks that get more complex each time they're hit. This isn't a From Software title, where you have to figure out the best ways of dodging the many telegraphed attacks thrown your way. This is a third-person shooting game whose character controller is stiff and slow, where the majority of the challenge comes from moving the camera to the right spot to shoot at something. So, what kind of bosses do we get as a result? Glorified bullet sponges that do absolutely nothing other than waste your time and ammo, with the only real difficulty stemming from another player possibly sneaking up and killing you while you're distracted. All that these bosses are programmed to do is shoot at your side with the hope you'll accidentally sidestep into their line of fire. They're literally just hostile NPCs with larger health bars. They're so piss easy to take down, they either need a ton of henchmen surrounding them to overwhelm the player, or some cheap melee attack where they briefly magnetize themselves to you for easy damage. Then when the developers do try something to make the bosses feel like actual bosses, it's still lame. Wow, look at that! You have to shoot the eyes of this thing before you can actually damage Nitros. Totally not a huge waste of time and ammo. Whoa, if I shoot these little shields surrounding Daigo, it'll stun him. Oh my god, Shogun X is so epic and cool. He doesn't even use a gun. Look at this slow fireball attack you can just walk around. Look at this slow sword dash you can just walk around. Look at this slow eruption attack you can just walk around. No, this game does not have good/great bosses, and it's not because of the ineptitude of the designers. Fortnite Battle Royale just can't really have a boss that's truly engaging because of the kind of game it is. That being said, I would like to see something that isn't a bullet sponge for once. What if you had an invulnerable boss that could only be damaged by getting them to collide with explosive barrels along the ends of their arena? They do some standard attacks for a while, like shooting at you or something, then gear up to dash into you. The boss tracks your position for a time, maybe with a visible path on the ground, so you direct them to one of those explosive barrels and move out of the way when they finally dash toward you, causing them to collide with the barrel and take damage. The cycle repeats a couple times, then the boss finally dies and drops their coveted mythic gun and medallion. Wouldn't that be a better challenge for special rewards than picking up every gray gun at a POI and dumping all their mags into something that just stands still half the time? Daigo, who I mentioned earlier, was a Season 3 boss that dropped a medallion that increased reload speed, but also regenerated shields passively. I freaked out a bit when I read about it in the news tab, but then I saw it said 1 shield per second up to 50 shield, and I was like, oh wait, this thing sucks, never mind. The shield medallions of Chapter 5 Season 1 were pretty annoying, and really the only medallion type I had a problem with. The first week of the chapter, these things individually healed up to 100 shield at a pretty fast rate. That was actually overpowered. They got nerfed by the next week, but I still found them kind of irritating. They had a slower rate of regeneration and only granted up to 50 shield, but that cap and amount regenerated could be increased the more medallions you picked up. Definitely more balanced, sure, but I still didn't like the idea of healing, an integral part of the game loop, being made passive for just a select few players. If you want to talk about medallions winning people games, these are prime examples. Look at this gameplay. Friends are dead, I shockwave away from the last team with dangerously low health, and pop a medkit while my medallion gives me 50 shield. I open fire and manage to knock one of the opponents, making sure to stand completely still so they can drain all the health I spent the last 10 seconds getting back. The other guy is getting closer, but being cautious. This allows me to gain a little shield back. I'm actually kind of nervous, so some of the most abysmal tracking ensues, and I just barely managed to get the victory. Look how much health I had left. That was incredibly scuffed. I shouldn't have won that, but I did. Why? Because of the shield medallion. If I had not regenerated any shields those 2 times, I would have lost guaranteed. There was no surviving such an endgame if it played out the same way and I didn't have the shield medallion with me. And that's not the only time I had scenarios like that in Chapter 5 Season 1. Those shield medallions were way too good the entire season. Let's return to the Daigo medallion. This thing is way worse than its predecessors. I just never benefited from the shield regeneration whenever I had this medallion because I either already had more than 50 shield or quickly popped other heals before it could do anything. That's another thing about Chapter 5 Season 1. You had minis, flowberries, and eventually flowberry fizz, but big shields were quite hard to come by. I guess the drop rate for them was lowered for some reason, but another part of it was large ammo boxes not dropping heals, which was a very common way of getting bigs. Obviously, big shields aren't the only way to replenish the first 50 shields, but they are a way. If you couldn't find any minis, fizz, or enough flow berries, it would have been nice if a big shield could pop out from somewhere. Shields during Chapter 6 Season 3 were as common as they normally are, so there just wasn't much use in Daigo's medallion. The faster reload was easily the more influential perk. We also had a new boss fight on the floating island against that core character. When sprint jumping, her medallion made you invisible and gave you the hop rock effect. I actually think this was a little annoying, purely based off one encounter I had. I ran into a guy who had the medallion, and he was clearly trying way too hard. He just kept sprint jumping over me, not letting himself stay on the ground for even a second. Like, dude, come on, I'm playing with a controller. I can't aim in these situations, especially when the partial invisibility does actually work a bit here since you're moving so quickly. Oh boy, Season 4. This one's a doozy. 3 medallions, 1 dropped by each of the Bug Queen bosses. 1 passively gave 3 shield per second up to 50. Already better than Daigo's medallion, but there were even more ways to get shields this time around. On top of that, it also gave the user Siphon. This medallion was the least useful of the 3. Now I'm suddenly remembering a few comments I saw in the Chapter 5 video of kids who couldn't understand why a Siphon medallion was good, but a shield medallion was bad. I guess I can try to explain it here as simply as I can. With the shield medallion, one can just shockwave away from a losing battle and hide to get some shield back. With the Siphon medallion, one actually has to confront and kill a player while not at full health to get some shield back. One user is at risk of dying, so they annoyingly run away. The other is also at risk of dying, but courageously goes into the fray anyway. Does it make sense now?
No.
Anyway, the next medallion increased movement speed while also giving your slide a boost, similar to mudsliding in Chapter 4. The third medallion gave you a double jump that made you immune to fall damage. In the first session I had this season, my friends and I were running into some really slippery people using those last 2 medallions combined with shockwave launchers. Man, this is actually kind of annoying, I began to think. 2 weeks later, the shockwave launcher got vaulted, as well as the 3 medallions. Wow, it's almost like having such insane movement reserved for 1 or 2 people in a match is obnoxious as hell for the rest of the lobby to deal with. Maybe if Epic Games didn't just internally playtest with their marketing team full of people that probably don't even play games, they would have learned that before the season even came out. The final medallion we saw could be acquired by dealing the most damage to the Megazord during its event. This one periodically marked nearby players. Aside from the shield medallions back in Chapter 5, Emma Frost's medallion was the only other one I considered a bit annoying. Just like the Megazord one, it marked nearby players. You kind of had to get it back then just so no one else in the match could. So obviously, I didn't like that they brought this medallion back, but at least it was only in the game briefly since it was tied to the Megazord event. While this wasn't much of a medallion, the Jebediah statue's head on the Springfield map could be worn to prevent a single headshot, and though it took up an inventory slot, it did display a medallion circle on the map and had its own icon when it wasn't in use. I don't know, I thought it was worth mentioning. That's all the medallions we had in Battle Royale. While they were definitely tamer than ever, some were still a little annoying. I really do hope they do away with them in Chapter 7. I just think the feature has more than worn its welcome now. Hopefully those Bug Queen ones from Season 4 sent a strong enough message to the developers. People are constantly asking me, how do you reach such a high level in Fortnite every season? Some might assume I just play the game a lot, but that's not the case at all. I play Fortnite once a week. The game is simply not worth my time as much as it used to be. That being said, I still want the Battle Pass rewards. Sure, they tend to be of subpar quality more often than not nowadays, but hey, they're free. I'm also not one to turn down the extra V-Bucks and the bonus rewards. Anyway, I was always reluctant to say anything about how I level up so much because I thought, oh, what if an Epic Games employee is lurking around my tiny channel, learns of my easy XP method, and patches it out? The thing is, this isn't really something you can patch, and if it were, I could easily just make a few tweaks to render Epic Games powerless again. So, ladies and gentlemen, behold, how I reach high levels without actively playing the game. It's as simple as that, folks. Now, back to the video. When I decided I'd eventually make a Chapter 6 video, I planned on having a segment where I'd discuss the weapons across the seasons and rate them using a tier list. However, doing such a thing requires one to have actually used every weapon to some extent, and when Season 2 started throwing all these one-of-a-kind exotic guns in our faces, I realized this tier list thing wasn't happening. Unless a new weapon was a standard gun in the loot pool, I rarely picked it up, if at all. It's hard to experiment in this game nowadays. Wanna try out a new weird weapon that just got added? Well, too bad. Pick it up and you're going to die to the next real player you face because they're rocking a standard loadout and are playing like their lives are on the line. I understand one must practice with these things to effectively use them, but I don't have time for that. Playing video games for hours a day is not my job, so I can't develop firm opinions on every single new thing added to Fortnite, nor get tons of clips for them. I don't care to get good with all this junk. I just wanted to have fun with my awful teammates for whatever limited time we had, and that meant sticking to what I knew. So yeah, no tier list of every gun present this chapter. I'm just going to go over whatever I feel like. Before I actually do discuss any weapons, I just wanted to say, Hitscan was brought back, baby.
So is there hit scan in this or something? Like, is this why the guns feel like guns? Because I'm like nailing my shots, bro. Like I'm winning in this game. How crazy is that?
I'm not sure why, but it took getting to Chapter 4 to make me somewhat decent at Fortnite's gunplay. During Chapters 1 and 2, I kind of just sprayed and hoped for the best. It's definitely why I liked the AUG post Chapter 2 Season 2. Its tight spread was really helpful for people like me. Chapter 3 was more of the same, but the red dots helped out somewhat. Chapter 4 was when I suddenly thought, hold on, if my opponent's far away, maybe I should wait for my crosshair to actually fully shrink before firing a shot. Now, I'm not going to act like I never did this during Chapters 1 through 3, but it was only on the rarest of occasions. Enter Chapter 4, and I've learned to be more patient and utilize first shot accuracy as often as possible. With this newfound prowess, I was now winning games with accuracies consistently in the 40s, sometimes even higher. Now that I truly understood how to shoot with the hit scan weapons of this game, I couldn't wait for the next chapter to come along and have a great time then. Unfortunately, Epic Games decided to ruin the fun by making the majority of Fortnite's guns projectile-based for Chapter 5, just when I finally got somewhat decent with the hit scan stuff. Now the 40% accuracies fell to a measly 20%, sometimes even lower. Getting above 30% accuracy became an extremely rare occurrence. Man, I had better accuracies playing Fortnite on the Switch, and on that version, you had to deal with an awful frame rate and tiny analog sticks. With Chapter 6 bringing hitscan weapons back, my gunplay pretty much went back to normal, with accuracies going back to the standard 40 and above, though games with 30s were in the mix too now since I don't play the game nearly as often as I did during Chapter 4. The inclusion of projectile-based weapons was, without a doubt, the worst thing about Chapter 5. These guns made shooting people from a distance a chore. It wasn't fun, especially when paired with the stuff you had to deal with throughout the seasons. All the annoyances from that era of Fortnite would have been significantly more tolerable if they just kept hitscan. It would have been easier to shoot all those slippery shield medallion players who'd instantly shockwave or grapple blade away the second their shields were cracked. It would have been easier to destroy those nitro-fueled cars at a distance in the wrecked season, and possibly shoot players out of the front seats as well. It absolutely would have made taking out all those jetpack users in the Marvel season easier. Basically, if Chapter 5's guns were hitscan, I wouldn't have hated on it so much. It'd definitely still be the worst chapter of Fortnite, don't get me wrong, but not by so much. I thought for sure Epic Games was going to keep adding crappy projectile-based ARs and SMGs to Battle Royale. I mean, why wouldn't they? Reload was a thing, and OG was coming back permanently. That's 2 Battle Royale modes normal people could go to if they wanted to play with hitscan guns. With them seemingly sated, Epic Games could continue experimenting on the main Battle Royale mode in their endless endeavor to attract new players. Of course, that experimentation would include continuing use of projectile-based weaponry established by Chapter 5. Thank God I was wrong though. The return of hitscan was so significant, Epic Games had to tell us in-game they brought it back. I don't know about you, but I think that was quite telling. The term hitscan is a bit on the technical side in my opinion. It's just not the kind of word you'd see said inside an actual game. An in-game patch note isn't going to say something like, switched to Manhattan distance over Euclidean for calculating the heuristic in our pathfinding algorithm as it is a much faster calculation that made more sense for our large grid-like maps. No, it's going to say something like, NPCs now move better, or something vague like that. Now, that is a bit of an extreme example, but I hope you get what I mean. And sure, maybe some people aren't going to know the definition of hitscan, but it's not that hard to just look it up and memorize. It's also much simpler for the devs to just say hitscan is back over bullets travel straight and instantly again. I'm starting to ramble, so I'll get to the point. Though succinct, hitscan sounds like a technical term, something you wouldn't see displayed within a game. Maybe in code comments or posts on social media, but never within the actual game. However, we did end up seeing it in-game. I felt vindicated seeing that word on display. Why? Because maybe, contrary to what some of the toddlers in the comment section of the last video would have you believe, projectile-based weapons were so disliked by the vast majority of Fortnite players, Epic Games had to desperately post this on their news tab as if to say, "We made the guns usable again. Hit scan. It's a fancy word, yes, but we know you know what it means. Things are hit scan again. Please play this chapter." All you Redditors and Twitter users in the previous video's comments section in such staunch support of projectile-based guns? Get bent. You guys were wildly in the minority, but so under the delusion you weren't, you confidently left such ignorant takes. Of course, being in the minority doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong, but it does in this case. The real skill lies in projectile. Pfft, give me a break. That's such a flimsy defense. Yeah, timing is a hard thing to master, especially when the variables are never the same in every scenario, but everything is ultimately left up to chance the instant you fire your weapon. Like I said in the Chapter 5 video, you can never truly predict where an opponent will be 0.075 seconds after you've pulled the trigger. Being patient, utilizing first shot accuracy with hit scan and tracking the player at a distance, is wholly skill-based because it's all about maintaining the crosshair on the target. If you care so much about skill, you shouldn't have a problem with hit scan. Anyone who complains about bullet drop is just admitting they have no experience with firearms. Yes! Yes! Such a relevant thing to bring up. In my cartoony shooting game where people jump out of flying buses, demolish buildings with a few pickaxe swings, and fight walking bananas, buff cats, and other creatures, I totally want the weapons to fire realistic shots.
Fuck you.
Shotgun.
The projectile argument is so bad, lol. Projectile is harder to use. The only people negatively impacted by projectile are bad players. Chapter 6 is proof of this. We went back to hit scan, but with scoped weapons, and players who were strong with projectile are now unstoppable with weapons like the hollow scope AR. Projectile is the more skill-dependent mechanic, and it actually helps protect low-level players.
What?
Kid, what kind of rebuttal is this? It makes no sense. If only good players are able to use projectile well, then it doesn't protect bad players. It just makes them easier targets. Now a good player can easily take them down while the bad player struggles to fight back. By the way, bad players and low-level players are the same thing. If something is harder to use, then everyone is negatively impacted by it, not just bad players. Sure, maybe good players can adapt to it better and get used to it, but they're ultimately still negatively affected by the change because they would have played better with the original version. The only people not affected by something like this are new players that have no experience with how things used to be. Also, saying players who were good with projectile became unstoppable with hitscan's return is just plain wrong. Going from projectile to hitscan isn't like, oh, I got used to lifting this 50-pound weight, so this 25-pound weight is much easier to pick up now. It's not that simple. Imagine I put a dartboard in front of you and hand you a laser pointer. Hit the center with it. Boom, it's easy to do. Sure, the light's probably not going to be right over the bullseye when you first switch it on, but once you see where the laser points, you can pretty quickly adjust. If the dartboard starts moving, you can still pretty consistently keep the laser centered on the board. Now let's say I take away your laser pointer and give you some darts. Try scoring a bullseye with them. It's harder, right? We added another layer of complexity to it. Now you have to focus on timing because you're trying to get two moving objects to converge at the same time. Let's not forget gravity is also involved. If you do get good at doing this, but I take away the darts and give you back the laser pointer, are you any better at using that laser pointer? No! You just revert back to pointing the laser right at the center with no need for timing at all. The experience you gained throwing the darts has absolutely no effect on your ability to direct something moving at the speed of light at a moving target. There are some mind-bogglingly stupid comments on that Chapter 5 video. But pseudo-intellectual ones like this take the cake. Kid, don't join the debate club at your middle school. I'd hate to see you embarrass yourself. You would have been better off just commenting skill issue or something. And no, these comments aren't stupid because they're disagreements, they're stupid because the disagreeing is done in bad faith. Whether by trying to counter when there was clearly no attention paid to what was said at all, straight up lying or misrepresenting my thoughts, or saying I was bad at the game and not elaborating any further. Then when they try to come off less disingenuous, their comments are completely illogical because these people clearly watch more YouTube shorts than study their reading and writing. Anyway, I'm convinced the people against hitscan guns, both kids and adult kids alike, were a mix of tourists who never played before Chapter 5, and slightly older Fortnite players who were never even a little competent at the game. Their aim was terrible even when stuff was hitscan, so when Chapter 5 introduced projectile ARs and SMGs that artificially lowered everyone's skill, these particularly bad players no longer felt as bad, because everyone sucked just as much as they did. If everyone sucks, no one sucks, am I right? Thank God hitscan came back. The game needed it. Hit me with the skill issue ad hominem all you want, but that doesn't change the fact that altering a core mechanic of your game to something much different after being untouched 6+ years on the market is objectively bad game design. Though it's clear, facts like this won't stop some of you from blindly supporting whatever this company does.
Don't ask questions, just consume product and then get excited for next products.
Alright, now let's actually talk about the guns. Season 1 gave us the Hollow Twister AR, and I must say, it was quite the surprise picking one up for the first time. I mean, I already saw hitscan was back, but a high fire rate scoped AR that's hitscan? Weren't guns like this the reason we got into the whole projectile-based mess in the first place? Yeah, the Chapter 5 guns had to suck for the sake of the undercooked modding mechanic, but I thought MKs, striker bursts, red eyes, and twin mags lasering people out of the sky in Chapters 3 and 4 was the main reason for the change. Now, I don't really care, I'll gladly use these kinds of guns, but I can understand people's frustration with getting shredded by some zero bloom weapon they had no time to react to. There's a simple reason these guns are so strong. Their effectiveness is directly proportional to the skill of the wielder. Now that I say that's pretty much the case for literally anything really, but I just think it's more evident for this particular weapon type compared to the other stuff Fortnite has. When you spray with the gun, what two things worsen over time? Bloom and recoil. As you hold down the trigger, your crosshair expands and your camera keeps getting pushed around, usually straight up. Both exist to make hitting targets not so easy a task. Recoil is manageable. You just have to counteract it with an opposing input to steady your aim. Bloom is not manageable. You have to play by its rules. Sure, you can stay still and crouch to reduce it slightly, but you're not going to have first shot accuracy if you continue to blast away after that first shot. You have to stop shooting and wait for the crosshair to shrink again. The better a player is, the better they are at mitigating a gun's recoil. Bloom, on the other hand, stays the same regardless of a player's skill. If you want to talk about something that protects low-level players, Bloom is exactly that. So, what happens when you add an automatic rifle with a fire rate just as fast as, if not faster than, ARs that have previously existed, but with the scope? Well, good players end up dominating because those little red dots eliminate the one thing that holds them back. Now they're dealing rapid damage at incredible ranges, something you normally only see up close with SMGs, or maybe mid-range with the spammable AR. So, how do we keep hitscan around without destroying people over 100 meters away super easily? Simple. Don't add these fast-shooting scoped ARs to the game anymore. Or at least, don't have one every single season. If Epic Games feels the need to frequently have a scoped AR in the loot pool, they need to bring back the original scoped AR. You know, this one. Though, not the OG one. That one used to shoot pretty quickly. I don't remember when it got tweaked, but when it did, it ended up having a much slower fire rate. But that didn't make it bad. It was still a really good gun, but not so good that it overshadowed whatever cousins it had in the loot pool. Tell me, who the hell was using the Ranger AR in Chapter 3? Who the hell was using the Havoc Suppressed AR in Chapter 4? Next to no one, because all those scoped ARs were just so dominant, you'd be a fool to use anything else. So yeah, while I don't mind the inclusion of those high fire rate scoped ARs, some people do, understandably. I don't ever want a majority projectile-based loot pool again, so the only solution is for Epic Games to simply stop constantly adding crazy scoped weapons to the game. With all that rambling out of the way, I guess I should actually talk about the Hollow Twister itself, huh? Well, I thought it was pretty good, but I found the hipfire a bit unreliable at times, which is natural for a scoped AR. I actually gravitated to the Fury because of this. I felt this thing shredded people up close, and even mid-range if bloom was somewhat favorable. It also functioned well enough at long range like any standard AR, but obviously got outshined by the Hollow Twister in this department. If you're in a standoff, both you and your opponent in portabunkers with some distance between them, and they have a hollow twister while you have a fury, you're going to have a hard time. If you peek in an attempt to get some shots in, you have to wait for your crosshair to shrink. As that happens, your opponent who's been hardscoping the whole time is easily going to take out like half your health. Then you'll crouch walk back a few steps and wonder why the hell you even tried. That was the only real weakness I saw in the Fury AR, something any standard rifle would suffer against if a fast scoped gun were there to rival it. SMGs were bad this season. No wait, they were bad the entire chapter. This weapon type sucks now, man. There was always an AR that did an SMG's job better. What is an SMG's job? Being there to switch to after blasting someone with a single shotgun shell from a pump. The Surgefire SMG was lame. Don't let those high-profile Fortnite YouTubers fool you.
Yo, this might be the most broken weapon in Fortnite.
Both the accuracy and fire rate increased the longer you sprayed, but I never found this feature all that appealing. This gimmick just isn't what I'd want out of an SMG. I don't want the crosshair to be super small. If I'm up close to an opponent and need to spray them down, I'd want the crosshair of my SMG to be somewhat widened so Bloom can take the wheel to compensate for my not so great aim in that scenario. If the fire rate increased without the crosshair shrinking, then the surge fire would have actually been good. Or maybe too good, I don't know. If a gun's crosshair is expanded, the randomness of Bloom will ensure you likely miss often. However, start increasing the fire rate, and some of those bullets are bound to start connecting regardless of how random they are. How do you make this increasing fire rate feature more balanced? By reducing Bloom at the same time. That way a player is only rewarded for being more accurate. You probably could have used this thing at long range if you were really good at tracking far away targets. If you were that good though, why not just use the hollow twister? There was also the Veiled Precision SMG, which had a scope. While I found it better than the Surge Fire, it also wasn't that remarkable. It was somewhat capable at long range thanks to its optic, but the low mag size and damage drop-off balanced that out. If you want to use something at long range with a scope, just use the hollow twister. So yeah, SMGs were lame this chapter. There were a couple in the Star Wars season, I barely used them. They brought back the Stinger SMG for Season 4, whatever, I barely used it. Again, there was always an AR that did an SMG's job better. I really only used them if they were one of the first weapons I found upon landing. I actually have a game saved where I picked up the scoped SMG, used it once on those forecast tower henchmen, then proceeded to let it rot in my inventory the whole game. What was going through my head back then? I was really doing the 4 inventory slots only challenge in Fortnite that match. Now that I've covered the scoped weapons of Season 1, let's talk about the weapon canting toggle they added. When aiming with the scoped weapon, you obviously look directly through the scope, but if you toggle weapon canting during this, the camera will zoom out and your gun will function like a non-scoped one, Bloom and all. This is probably one of the most useless things to ever be added to this game. If I'm picking up a scoped weapon, it's because I want to use the scope. A player shouldn't have a choice over perspectives like this. Instead, if they don't want to use the hollow sight on the hollow twister AR, they should go give the Fury some love. No weapon canting means better individuality among guns. Let the hollow twister be the exclusively scoped AR, while the Fury be the only non-scoped AR. The only time I ever toggled weapon canting was by accident, and when I did, it messed me up. It just completely knocks you out of your flow if you were in the middle of trying to track someone while scoped in. I feel it's a pointless feature, and hope it doesn't stick around. Alright, now let's go over the shotguns. We had the Sentinel Pump, Twin Fire Auto, and Oni. The Twin Fire Auto was quite bad. For a shotgun that epically fired 2 shots at the same time, it sure didn't feel like it did. Oh, and that reload time was atrocious. Now, I know for a fact it got better over time because it just started feeling better as the seasons went on, so let's actually check out the update history. Jeez, look how many times this got buffed. Decreased reload time, increased damage, increased max damage cap, increased structure damage, decreased reload time, increased damage, decreased reload time. Yup, it definitely did get better. I think the Oni shotgun kind of sucked. For the slow shotgun with a small spread and low magazine capacity, it definitely did not deliver on damage. It felt really weak compared to the Sentinel Pump. Looks like it got buffed a few times, but I had already decided on avoiding it as often as possible. And yeah, the Sentinel was decent. I honestly thought it was weak at first too, but the more I used it, the stronger it felt. I thought maybe it got buffed once or twice, but it actually never got touched according to the wiki. I guess I just wasn't landing enough meaty shots the first couple weeks. Overall, not a bad pump considering Epic Games has seemingly been too scared to make shotguns do decent damage since Chapter 3 started. We got beasts like the Thunder and Havoc pump in Chapter 4, but nothing's felt as good since. At least the Sentinel felt better than the Striker and Infiltrator pump. Some old weapons were brought back, and although that's a completely normal thing Fortnite does all the time, it almost felt like it had been forever since they did this, considering every time an old gun was brought back in Chapter 5, it was basically brand new since it had to be turned into a worse weapon. One of the returning guns was the lock-on pistol, and thank God it came back when it did. I don't know what happened, but for a few sessions late into Season 1, I could barely aim. I was just not feeling it, and my fingers were weirdly stiff. I was borderline dead weight to my team. Of course, that eventually passed, but during that time, the lock-on pistol helped out a bit. They brought the hunting rifle back, but they ruined it. Why were the bullets dropping like it was a Chapter 5 gun? This was not the hunting rifle I used to know. One day I found myself wondering when the railgun would return. Even though I sucked with it, I always thought it was cool since, well, it's a railgun and the only hit-scan sniper to ever exist in the game. Anyway, the next day, I hop on with my friends, and there it is, the railgun in the Season 1 loot pool. What a crazy coincidence. I barely picked it up. Again, I sucked with it. Although it's hit scan, that huge laser puts the fear of God into your opponents when they see it, making them a bit harder to hit than an unsuspecting player unknowingly moving into your projectile sniper shot. Now I'll ask you this. What's the most annoying explosive weapon in Fortnite? Maybe some would say the pre-nerfed sticky grenade launcher from Chapter 4, or the reworked grenade launcher whose projectiles immediately exploded after one bounce, or the boom bolt combined with the infinite ammo medallion in Chapter 5 Season 3, or maybe even the grenade launcher car mod from that same season. Okay, some of those were pretty annoying, but I was thinking the explosive repeater rifle. This thing was introduced back in Chapter 4, and not fun being on the receiving end of. It's probably one of the most, if not the most, no-skill guns in Fortnite. First off, it's a sniper, meaning you can have up to 50 rounds reserved for it, unlike the mere 12 rockets a typical explosive weapon taps into. It also has a fairly quick fire rate, for a sniper anyway, with projectiles that travel fast and explode on impact. This thing is ridiculous, and one of my favorite guns in the game. Like, look at this. I'm not even trying to shoot anyone directly. I'm just shooting near players and getting easy damage off. Look at this fool trying to use the railgun on me. You think a gun requiring skill to use effectively stands any chance against me and my explosive repeater? All I have to do is mindlessly go and you're dead. God, it's such a good weapon. That kid must have been screaming.
Okay, so much better! I hate the
Explosive repeater rifle.
so much!
So yeah, the explosive repeater's a super fun no-skill gun. I was surprised it got added back. Yeah, it's annoying to be the victim of one, but as long as it's a weapon lots of people in a match can have at the same time, it's fair game. In Season 2, the Striker Burst made a return, but not the Chapter 3 one. No, we just got a hit-scan version of the ugly Chapter 5 one. Now, as a lover of the post-Chapter 2 Season 2 AUG, I thought maybe weapon canting could actually be of use here to make this Striker Burst function like a regular burst, but no, it didn't work. It didn't feel the same. Anyway, because you can't really spray with the burst up close and the Fury got vaulted, I ended up leaning on the Hollow Twister this season. Suddenly the hipfire wasn't so bad anymore. There was a new sniper, but I didn't care for it. I used it maybe twice. I've never been a sniper guy. With other weapon types being hit scan, I never had the patience to try leading my shots. Chapter 5 was the only exception to this because everything from that era was so bad, the Reaper sniper became a necessity. It was also just straight up better than any sniper we had before. Really easy for a normie like me to use, especially when made even stronger through proper modding. The Outlaw shotgun felt like a better version of the double barrel from Chapter 1. Unlike the Oni, where I'd fire one shot, then switch to a spray weapon, I always felt the need to unload both shells immediately, and that made my performance with the Outlaw a bit inconsistent. I'd either land the two nastiest shots on my opponent, killing them near instantly, or get sent back to the lobby myself. Can anyone tell me if the pump and dump was good? Not only do I not remember ever being on the receiving end of this weapon pair, I also never used it. I don't know, I just don't like not being able to ADS. Sure, you don't really need to ADS with a shotgun, but that doesn't mean you never need to. On top of that, I don't want the SMG that comes with it. I'd rather switch to my AR to spray. They brought the sticky grenade launcher back, and I was like, oh, that's an interesting choice. This was from Chapter 4 Season 4, which coincidentally had a similar vault infiltration theme. Okay. Sometime later, I find people carrying scoped burst SMGs, twin mag ARs, and infiltrator pumps. Okay, these were also from Chapter 4 Season 4. What's going on here? Are they also going to bring the rocket ram back even though we already have something like it right now? Yeah, they brought it back, alongside business turrets. I just don't get it. Why did they bring back every single weapon that was introduced in Chapter 4 Season 4? What could possibly be the reason other than, oh, these things were from a season that also tried and failed to emulate the magic of Chapter 2 Season 2? I was honestly kind of annoyed by this back then, but not sure why. I mean, it was a completely unimportant thing that did nothing other than diversify the loot pool a bit. Maybe it was because I just didn't like Chapter 4 Season 4. Seeing all these items again reminded me of that terrible era of the game people tend to foolishly look back on positively because, ooh, shiny old mythics in vaults! I love the mammoth pistol, so I was happy to see it back. It's just such a fun, simple, and satisfying weapon to use. We even got a mythic version that had 2 rounds in it, which was awesome. Though, I couldn't be bothered to go after the boss that dropped it to get it, so unless someone hand-delivered it to me, I never got to use it. I initially thought the plasma burst laser was a bit gimmicky, kind of like the ray gun from Chapter 2 Season 7. I did get 1 kill with it and was like, whoa, this could kinda melt people actually. But it was just a glorified SMG, so it felt like a waste of an inventory slot, meaning you weren't catching me using it anytime after early game. I must admit though, it was extremely useful against those never-ending henchmen during those heists since it didn't consume any ammunition. Like I mentioned before, we were given tons of exotics this season. They were located at those underground black markets, but I just brushed past them constantly without even realizing they were there. They required a dilbit to purchase, meaning you had to painstakingly go through those stupid heist events every time you wanted one, so I guess I'm glad I ultimately didn't care if I got these exotics or not. Of course, I'd get an occasional drop from a player I killed, but it was never anything I felt like equipping. Like a rocket jump RPG? I don't want to use that. A projectile-based mammoth pistol? Why the hell would I want to drop my awesome hit scan one over that? I never came across the normal stuff like the chili pepper hollow twister or the slap twin fire shotgun. Oh, and let's not forget about the rift launcher. That thing gave me Vietnam flashbacks. Remember that one augment from Chapter 4 that rifted you when your shields were cracked? It was so annoying to deal with because it just gave players an easy escape when they should have died. This rift launcher was exactly that, except more annoying since one could just shoot it at their feet at any time. As long as it was loaded, that is. I feel people started complaining a lot about melee weapons in Fortnite third-person shooter Battle Royale during Chapter 5. I don't know, were people saying anything about the Kingsman in Chapter 2 Season 2? What about the Wolverine claws in Chapter 2 Season 4? The Scythe from Chapter 2 Season 8? Maybe I was out of the loop during that era. Anyway, I remembered seeing some complaints about the Chains of Hades, though I personally rarely ran into people who used them. I thought the Nitro Fists were amazing, and never had a huge problem with their attack. Either I'd get overwhelmed by the brain-dead spam and launch myself to safety with my own fists, or I'd stoop to my opponent's level and punch back. However, I did see many clips of players just breaking into other people's boxes and spamming the jab till their opponents died, turning them into prisoners of their own 1x1s. That seemed like a common, insufferable occurrence, but I didn't play build mode that season, so I never got to experience that firsthand. Not saying the fists weren't a problem, just establishing I have bias and could look past the occasional degeneracy I encountered since it was one of the best movement items Epic Games ever added to their cosmetic collecting game. The Black Panther claws didn't seem all that bad, but the War Machine jetpack was so obnoxious and overused, it overshadowed any other gimmicky hero weapon during the Marvel season. I think I had to deal with those claws maybe once that entire time. Now that brings us to Chapter 6, the Typhoon Blade. I didn't bring it up earlier because I was saving it for this point of the video. It was a melee weapon players got in your face with to overwhelm you with the flurry of attacks, hoping to get a free kill. I did not mind it. Like the Nitro Fists, there were occasions where it got a little annoying for me, but more often than not, I was able to keep a cool head and out-DPS these 9-year-old melee spammers. If I was ever caught off guard and not well prepared, meaning not enough health or not immediately using the right weapon, then yeah, I'd get nervous and usually end up falling to the opponent's very skillful use of the sword. Generally though, I'd come out on top 9 times out of 10. I guess I should also mention I did not like using the sword's attack myself. I almost exclusively used the Typhoon Blade for movement, and fought with it maybe 3 times the entire season. So overall, while it could be annoying, the Typhoon Blade was mostly tolerable. Did it have to be in the game? No, the season would have been fine without it. So, with Season 1 over and the whole ninja theme coming to pass, what were we going to get if Epic Games decided to add another melee weapon for the next season? This was what I was alluding to when discussing Season 2 earlier. This stupid bat was, without a doubt, the worst thing about Chapter 6. Lawless was easily the worst season of the chapter because of this obnoxious weapon. Look, this would have just been a boring season on its own, but the bat made it boring and not fun. I couldn't imagine playing this game alone with this thing around. Playing with friends was the only way to get any enjoyment from this season. The bat functions similarly to the Typhoon Blade. Flurry attack you could use to overwhelm your opponents plus a faster sprint that drained your stamina at a slightly slower rate while equipped. I defended the Nitro Fists. I defended the Typhoon Blade. I even wanted to defend the bat after my first few encounters against it because it initially seemed like a reskin of the Typhoon Blade. Yeah, another spammy melee weapon that makes you run faster and drains the sprint meter slower. How original. But then these animals quickly realized the charge swing was the only attack the bat really had. I literally never saw players use the standard jab after the first week. It was just so cheap. There was nothing you could do once someone started charging toward you with this thing other than brace for impact. I already know some kid is going to comment something stupid like,
"You could have just killed them before they got to you."
If the opponent is only a few meters away and they pull the bat out, you're going to get hit, no question. You simply cannot deal 250 damage in that extremely short window of time you have left on the ground. These people are running to you faster than normal because of the bat, they don't even have to charge it long to launch you, and the hitbox for that thing is extremely generous. At least against the Typhoon Blade, you could retaliate while getting sliced up. You think you could do the same after getting sent flying by the bat when your crosshair is at max expansion and ADSing midair isn't possible? Please, this isn't a Fortnite trailer. There also wasn't even a guarantee you'd still be alive when you landed because you could take fall damage. God, this thing was just so annoying, man.
What are you doing? Your mother doesn't love you. 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 Your mother doesn't love you.
About halfway into the season, I finally had enough and decided to stoop to these people's level. What do you think happened?
Your mother doesn't love you.
What? I'm actually salty after rewatching that. Seriously? The one guy I ever hit with the bat. And he had a drill in his inventory! Who was carrying a bat and a drill at the same time that season? And this dude comes back into the fray after we kill his friends and is still only using his bat. He knew it was the only way. Oh, what happened? You didn't win the 1v4 with the brain-dead no-skill melee weapon like you thought you would? Anyway, how can Epic Games just keep making these kinds of melee weapons when they already had perfect ones to reference from Chapter 4? You know, the Shockwave Hammer? The Kinetic Blade? Those were great movement, but had poor offensive capabilities. The Hammer Slam, while quite devastating, was not the easiest thing to land and fairly punishable if missed. The Kinetic Blade's 2-hit jab was just so stiff and awkward, it was a miracle if you could even hit your opponents with it and survive. If you're going to keep adding melee weapons to your third-person shooter Epic Games, can you make their attacks suck so they're not the primary use, please? With the season centered around Star Wars, there obviously had to be lightsabers in the loot pool, and while you'd expect me to go, great, from one melee weapon to another, I didn't actually care because lightsabers had been in the game several times before. I never found them a pain to deal with back then. They can obviously be pretty deadly, but the attack animations don't really whisk the user all over the place like the Typhoon Blade, and they don't have some crazy broken secondary functionality like the bat. Though, there was this one time my friend and I got eviscerated at the same time by one guy's Palpatine lightning attack. Really, the only annoying thing about lightsabers this season was that they didn't always grant you a faster sprint and double jump, which was the only reason to pick them up. If you got it as a drop from a guy you killed, it just functioned as a basic lightsaber. You had to go to those hologram training thingies that spawned around the map to get a tricked out saber, which I only just now learned. I was so confused as to why some gave you extra movement and some didn't that season. I already said the SMGs were lame, so let's talk about the ARs. There was this scoped one I initially thought was decent. However, during my first session with it, I tried it at a distance on some players riding the train and just whiffed every shot. And I didn't understand what was going on because my little dot was right on them when I fired. Was this thing actually projectile based and I didn't notice since I hadn't attempted shooting at such a far distance till then? Why, of course. That has to be the answer. It's the weapon's fault I missed those shots. This thing's just a DMR. After that, I avoided it for the rest of the season. Yeah, I'm stupid. It was hit scan. There was an actual DMR in the game then, but I thought it was classified as a sniper, so I continued to believe the scoped AR was the DMR of the season. Oh, and I almost never picked up the marksman rifle. I do remember getting melted once by two dudes who both blasted me with it at the same time when I peeked out a porta-bunker, so it was probably not that bad. Anyway, there was also a fast shooting AR and a slow one. No, I'm not calling these things by their names. I didn't like using the former at a distance, so the latter was my go-to. The slow fire rate made me more patient, meaning I'd successfully land more far-away shots. But it also wasn't so slow it couldn't hold its own up close. The hip fire wasn't bad at all. There was a pump and tack, which were okay, but oh my god, the Jawa Blaster. That was the best shotgun this season. No, the best shotgun this chapter. Easily up there with the Thunder and Havoc pump. Not only did it just obliterate, it had great aural feedback too. This thing was insanely satisfying to use. They should totally reskin this shotgun and add it back as a new weapon in the future, like they did with the Stark Industries rifle. There were also these imploder grenades. They pulled you in and launched you back, possibly causing fall damage, which is why I initially thought, okay, if it's not the lightsabers, these will be the Bat's successor. The thing is, no one really used them. The only time I ever got launched by one of these grenades and died was when I was fighting that boss at the First Order base that threw them occasionally. With Fortnite doing away with the Star Wars stuff, our weapons went back to normal. Instead of that Han Solo pistol, we went back to the suppressed pistol. Wait, no we didn't. We got this Hyper Burst pistol instead for Season 3. I guess it wasn't horrible, but I just want the tactical pistol back. There were these dual revolvers that let you do a weird mid-air slow motion thing, and I'm sorry, but no. Too gimmicky for me. Never truly used them. I just knew if I ever actually tried these on somebody, I'd just get lasered out of the air by a normal weapon. We also got a new DMR, which got an eye roll from me of course, but the few times I reluctantly used it were surprisingly not awful. Slowish fire rate, heavy damage, fast bullets, the fact that there weren't any fast shooting hit scan scoped ARs in the loot pool, I think the Deadeye DMR was ultimately pretty decent and not really outclassed by anything. This guy's up there with the Huntress DMR from Chapter 5. There were these special pom-poms that transformed you into
Oh my goodness! The monster!
I wasn't entirely sure how it worked because I never used it myself, but my assumption was users were on a timer, which could be reduced further by getting shot. That would have been balanced, so instead, players just had a new health bar that needed to be completely drained in order to switch back to normal, meaning they could potentially stay a monster forever unless they voluntarily changed back themselves. This thing got added and quickly removed a couple times, but finally stuck around for the last few weeks of the season, and I have to admit those final weeks kind of sucked. These pom-poms just wreaked havoc. So many people were using them, and it got pretty annoying to deal with. This was basically the spammy, overwhelming melee weapon of the season. Although you can fight back whilst being attacked like the Typhoon Blade, it isn't as effective because you're not damaging the player, you're damaging the Storm Beast, which could have up to 600 health. I don't know about you, but I was not doing that much damage up close under so much pressure. Your best bet was to just run away, but that wasn't too effective either considering the Storm Beast also had infinite sprint. Whether you were wasting the exceedingly rare 4 shockwave grenades you managed to find or using up the charges of your base boost gauntlets, that pom-pom user was eventually going to catch up to you since they had nothing to exhaust. So yeah, the pom-poms were actually a bit annoying. Luckily, it was only a problem for a few weeks, unlike the Bat, which was problematic for an entire season. The Spire Rifle. This was my baby. Another gun perfect for all ranges. It hits pretty hard, so getting sparse shots in through first shot accuracy far away isn't a wasteful endeavor, you can spray an opponent down pretty effectively mid-range, and the hip fire was fantastic. Why the hell would I ever want to use those on vaulted Season 1 SMGs? Also, 50 rounds per mag? That's crazy! You don't have to worry about reloading this thing for a while. The Fury AR got unvaulted, but it was honestly irrelevant at that point, man. After getting a feel for the Spire Rifle, I was not using the Fury unless I was desperate. Sadly, the Spire Rifle didn't stick around for the 4th season. We got this stupid OXR rifle instead. This thing sucked. I think the bloom was bad and found the fire rate a bit too slow. Luckily, you didn't have to use this thing because the Hammer AR made a return. This is a great weapon, but I actually used to not like it back then. It came out during Chapter 3 Season 3.
That is nasty!
And I really felt the need to use scoped weapons during that time. Yes, that included the original DMR. Why? Because my aim was atrocious that season. I spoke about this in an older video, but never cleared anything up afterward. I wasn't at my standard setup during that time and was using a TV instead of a monitor. Turns out, I never switched HDMI 2 to game mode, which led to input delay. I felt it of course, but had no idea that was the problem. I just thought because I was using a larger screen, there was some kind of mental calibration I needed to go through to get used to it. Yeah, it sounds a little silly. Essentially, I wasn't bad that season because I was that bad, it's because I was unknowingly being screwed over by a peripheral. Chapter 3 Season 3 was still lame though.
That is disgusting!
Anyway, the Hammer AR is a fantastic weapon. Perfect for all ranges. The super tight spread makes it almost too good for spraying. It was definitely a must-have. I say was, not because we're past this season, but because the gun got vaulted during it. OXR's gear can't be beat? Yeah, except by weapons from 3 chapters ago. Epic Games realized they made a mistake when they saw too many people having fun. At least they essentially replaced it with the hollow twister, that way I didn't have to stoop to using the OXR rifle. Then they brought the MK7 of all guns back. It's a great gun, but I honestly suck with this thing whenever it returns. I always forget how insane the recoil is. To digress a bit, in the Chapter 5 video, I began my Medallions section with bosses. I brought them up to say I didn't mind their inclusion because, at the end of the day, the mythics they dropped weren't ultra overpowered or anything. There were definitely some strong ones, like Sky's Scar, but I never felt at a severe disadvantage when someone other than me had them. My opinion on bosses soured a bit at the start of Chapter 5 because they were now dropping these obnoxious shield medallions that made wielders annoying to deal with, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I stated there were a couple mythic weapons I genuinely did not like being on the receiving end of, but they weren't boss drops, so they were irrelevant to the discussion. One was the overclocked pulse rifle from Chapter 4 Season 2. Only one was available in a match and could be acquired from the capture point on the floating island. This assault rifle was doing like a bajillion damage to the body with a single hit scan bullet over 100 meters away. It was a rather difficult weapon to deal with considering the rest of the lobby could only use Havoc Suppressed and Red-Eye ARs against it. The second mythic I found problematic was the Foundation's MK7, specifically when it was brought back in Chapter 4 Season 4. However, some commenters didn't get the point of that mythic's discussion and therefore didn't understand the fairly obvious reason to dislike the MK7 during that time. The MK7 was in Chapter 3 and it was a boss drop. Did you not play during Chapter 3? Man, there's literally footage of me playing Chapter 3 Season 1 in that video. I didn't hate the mythic MK7, I hated that it was a one-of-a-kind gun during Chapter 4 Season 4. All those mythics they brought back that season were one-of-a-kind as well, yeah, but the MK7 was unquestionably the best one. Really, it was the best weapon in the whole game that season. With only one player able to use it, everyone else was at a disadvantage because their only options to combat it were the Havoc Suppressed AR, the cruddy Thermal DMR, and the Twin Mag AR, which was a great scoped rifle, but just not on the same level as the MK7. Guess what, kids? In Chapter 3 Season 1, there was a full spectrum of MK7s. I didn't feel as though I was in a losing position in a 1v1 if my opponent had the mythic while I had like a blue one.
The Rock's mythic, man, as you saw, this thing is just straight up amazing. Even just the non-mythic versions, this gun's already amazing. We'll be taking this stuff, man.
The Foundation's MK7 rifle was totally fine in its introductory season. I guess I'm the idiot for thinking everyone watching would understand the difference. Alright, back to Chapter 6. There was this Weekend of Champions event where a few weapons were briefly unvaulted, and the boom bow was one of them. Yes, the boom bow. This hasn't been in the main game since Chapter 1, I'm pretty sure. When I say TNTina's Kaboom Bow sucks, it's because of the boom bow. The predecessor was better. Kaboom Bow, 75 splash damage. Boom Bow, 100 splash damage. Kaboom Bow arrows only explode when the bow is fully drawn back. Boom Bow arrows explode no matter what and still do 100 splash damage. Kaboom Bow runs on charges. Sure, it's infinite, but you need to wait a long time for them to come back. Boom Bow uses shotgun ammo, meaning no recharging is needed. It's a limited resource, yes, but ammunition is extremely easy to come by and max out. Why should a mythic weapon be objectively weaker than its legendary version? Why is Kaboom worse than Boom? Why does the best Fortnite skin have one of the worst mythics ever? Hey, let's play a game and only use the mythics associated with their skins, she said, using Midas. No, I don't want to use the stupid bow while you get an actual decent weapon. It's tough being a TNTina enjoyer out here. Before I even hopped on this season, a friend sent me a clip of Ninja using Wrecker revolvers going, "Oh my god guys, this is the most broken thing in Fortnite since the Chapter 1 Scar did 98 headshot damage." Although that was explicitly about the exotic one, all versions of the gun were already nerfed by the time I logged in. They probably wouldn't have felt broken to me either way. Sure, it had surprising range for a video game shotgun, and since it was classified as a pistol, you could double pump with it. Then there was the exotic version's fire rate, but I'm sure it was really only the good players going crazy with this thing. AKA, not me. That doesn't mean it shouldn't have been nerfed though, especially since kids in lower lobbies just end up copying what they see streamers and YouTubers do. There was also the sweeper shotgun, which I found a decent tack derivative. I didn't really have a preference between this and the Wrecker revolver. I was satisfied using either one. They brought the Frenzy Auto shotgun back at some point. This was the super fun, no-skill spam shotgun from Chapter 5. Although it got nerfed a few times back then, it must have been tweaked a little more before getting added back since it felt a lot weaker here. The Twinfire Auto was removed in the same update, so it's clear this castrated Frenzy was a replacement. Epic Games buffed the Twinfire Auto so many times, they went, nope, gun's good now, it's gotta go. In terms of an annoying melee weapon, we kind of had one near the end of the season. No, I'm not talking about that K-pop Demon Hunter's sword. That thing sucked on offense, which was good. The last call item from Fortnite Mares is what I'm referring to. Equipping it increased your sprint speed and reduced stamina consumption, of course, but I think the attack was a little harder to endure than the Typhoon Blade. You either needed to already be shooting before your opponent even reached you, or immediately create some distance. Luckily, transforming into Ghostface didn't give players a new health bar, and you could easily get away with something like the chainsaw that was brought back. Ultimately, the last call was a tad annoying, but nowhere near as troublesome as the Bat or Storm Beast pom-poms. The Simpsons season had a pretty simple loot pool of old guns, so there's not too much to say here. The Thunder Shotgun came back, the Striker AR came back as hit scan, the Suppressed Scar was the go-to AR though. That thing was already good, but they made it even better by tightening the spread. There were some Simpsons-themed weapons, but I wasn't too keen on using them. Mr. Blasty was pretty good, but that was just a revolver, not gimmicky in the slightest. Oh yeah, when a friend revealed to me there was going to be a Simpsons season, I said they should add this to the game. And they totally did. I'd love to be like, bro, I predicted it! But considering it was from an episode about guns, it wasn't that crazy a prediction. Understandably, this 5-gun was not very good. Not bad as an SMG, I guess, but the actual shotgun part was quite weak, which is what I wanted to use it for. Mo was actually a boss on the map, but for some reason he dropped a Mythic Striker AR instead of a Mythic 5-gun. What were they thinking? This is rather trivial to bring up, but it would have been nice if the standard weapons matched the look of the mini-season itself. Simpsons Peely holding a Thunder Shotgun and the Fish Stick holding a Striker AR in the season key art looked extremely weird. Why couldn't the whole loot pool just get a cel-shaded overhaul? The answer is most certainly wraps. Even if the default textures on the standard weapons were made cel-shaded, wraps would override them, and most wraps aren't cel-shaded, so the issue would persist. Of course, Epic Games could have just disabled wraps for this season, but I'm sure that wouldn't have gone over well. The weapons of Chapter 6 were decent. SMGs felt pretty irrelevant, but that's likely been the case throughout most of Fortnite Battle Royale's lifespan. Of course, there have been some genuinely good SMGs over the years, but when it comes to efficiency, rocking 2 weapons, an AR that can work up close and afar, and a shotgun, is the way to go. I've done this in the past obviously, but with all those prevalent scoped rifles not having the most reliable hipfire and tac derivatives not being very good, I got too accustomed to having a tertiary weapon in my inventory to switch to after firing a pump. That all being said, I do think this chapter had the weakest lineup of SMGs we've ever seen. With the exception of the fantastic Jawa Blaster, shotguns were fine overall. There's no way you can get any worse than Chapter 3 in this category. ARs were without a doubt the best weapons of the chapter. The Hollow Twister was obviously really good, the Fury was pretty strong, the Heavy Blaster from the Star Wars season was great, the Spire Rifle was awesome, we had the short but glorious return of the Hammer AR in Season 4, the MK7 even came back, and the Suppressed Scar got even better for the Simpsons season. Let's just pretend the OXR rifle never existed. Why were these guns so good? Because they were hit scan. Making the vast majority of weapons hit scan again was absolutely the right move. Don't ever go back to mostly projectile-based guns, Epic Games. We had unique weapons sprinkled throughout the chapter, but I really didn't care for most of it. I wasn't using the Fire Oni Mask, Mist Gauntlets, Precision Airstrike, nor any of the numerous exotics available. I'm just glad there was normal stuff in the loot pools I felt comfortable using. Anyway, we had a few melee weapons to deal with pretty regularly, and they could be annoying, so I hope that gets toned down in the future. This is a shooting game after all.
Come on, who wants to play that shit? I need to shoot some niggas. Pow.
Now that I've gotten the main Battle Royale mode, the only thing I really care about, out of the way, let's talk about other modes. I'll start off by saying I don't like that Epic Games decided on making Fortnite a platform. I think it should just be Save the World, because that's what Fortnite was to begin with, Battle Royale, and Creative. I had a negative reaction to the modes they added back in Chapter 5 simply because they're not Fortnite. Fortnite is about shooting stuff. I want Fortnite to be Fortnite, not LEGO Guitar Racing Royale featuring Jonesy. LEGO Fortnite gives a bunch of XP, so it obviously has a consistently high player count. High for LEGO Fortnite, that is. And no, I refuse to believe it's because people actually like it. It is so unbelievably boring. I don't care how much content they've been drip-feeding players since LEGO Fortnite released. It is not making the game any more engaging. Kids, if you want to play a good adventure game with procedurally generated worlds, hop on Terraria or something. Preferably on PC via Steam.
Suck a dick, dude. Literally, the fattest one you can.
And, you know, I've played a LEGO game or two in the past and had fun with them. They were charming. This, on the other hand, is far from that. It just reeks of, I don't know, contractual obligation. It's just all you can think about when the experience is so lackluster. Now let's talk about Rocket Racing. Oh, pardon me, I forgot. It's dead because Epic Games realized it was a failure and gave up on it. I didn't mention it before, though one could have easily guessed, but I'm extremely biased against Festival. Why? Because I always thought these music games were lame and significantly lacking in substance. I just don't like how ultra-casual and cozy this boring genre is. Now, before you start breathing heavily on your keyboard, I am well aware these games can get really challenging when there are tons of notes to play. But at the end of the day, you're just pressing buttons at the right time. You could argue, in bad faith, every game is just pressing buttons at the right time, but you can't seriously expect people to agree with such an argument when any common-sense individual would easily see that shooting someone out of the sky in Fortnite Battle Royale is much more involved compared to the bare-bones press button when linearly moving shape lines up with outline of shape of Fortnite Festival. I also wasn't fond of the idea of Epic Games attracting fans of this genre to Fortnite for the sake of increasing the player count. Why couldn't Festival have been its own game? Probably for the same reason Rocket Racing wasn't just a new mode for Rocket League. They had no faith it would do well unless it was attached to the already extremely successful brand. It reminds me of other parts of the entertainment industry, where creeps get their greasy paws on a beloved IP, only to tarnish it because they never actually cared for it. All they wanted was to present their own horrible ideas, but they knew they wouldn't be good enough in an original work, so they had to inject it into the existing popular IP to trick people into consuming it. It's similar to how the people who worked on Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League desperately tried to get people interested in their uninspired live service junk by saying it took place in the Arkham universe. Oh my god, the Arkham games are classics! If it's in the same universe, this game has to be worth trying out! Anyway, the only reason Festival has a decently high player count for a non-Battle Royale mode is because there's nothing else like it around, at least in the mainstream. There is so much variety out there for racing games, Little Miss Rocket Racing never stood a chance. There are definitely a few alternatives to LEGO Fortnite, but again, I'm adamant it only has players because of the XP. Festival, though, doesn't really have any alternatives on the market, especially when you consider the team that developed it, Harmonix, co-created Guitar Hero and went on to create the Rock Band games. Yeah, under Epic Games, they're definitely stuck working on Festival forever. We're probably never seeing a Rock Band 5. Oh, and Rock Band 4 got delisted not too long ago, so there's really nothing out there now. I learned about this thing called Clone Hero, but that doesn't really count as an alternative. The overwhelming majority of people who play games would rather go to a store, see a game on a shelf, buy it, and shove it into a console, or just download it from the respective digital store already on their systems. They don't want to do any of this, download an installer from a website that isn't Steam or the Epic Games Store, find a website you can download playable songs from, drag downloaded song files to the song directory the program needs to scan so you can actually play them. Oh, and what if the executable doesn't run on my gaming laptop because McAfee tells me it's bad? And oh, there are so many little things that are going wrong and I don't know how to read the documentation that tells me exactly how to troubleshoot everything. It's a hassle for those that don't want to get into anything that's even remotely technical. With Festival, you just launch Fortnite and it's there. Want to play a specific song? Go to the item shop and look for it. When you get it, it'll show up in your song menu and you can play it. It'll cost you like $4.50, but I'm sure you, a casual player of games, are fine spending that money if it means the process is convenient and all that under the hood stuff stays under the hood. Oh, I'm also biased against— oh, fuck, I spit my tongue, dude! I'm also biased against Festival because I like very little of the stuff most people consider music, and that's pretty much all that's available when playing this mode. I'm not going to act like I've never touched Festival, but the 4 or 5 times I have, I turn the volume off. Now, I'm not going to suddenly like playing this not-so-entertaining game mode if they added music I like, but would it kill them to get some video game tracks in here? I'd be much more engaged pressing buttons to hit shapes on screen if I were hearing or something like or maybe even I think I'd respect the existence of Festival by a sliver if they had those kinds of tracks available. I'd respect it by another sliver if they sold uncensored music in the shop too. Come on, Epic Games, I want to see an unfiltered Die Very Rough by Mario Judah in here. If Epic Games were to make more modes about shooting people, I'd have less of a problem with it. I don't care for Ballistic at all, nor do any of the friends I play with that religiously play Counter-Strike, but at least it's a mode about guns. Fortnite, ignoring creative and save the world, is Battle Royale. If people want to play Battle Royale, they go to Fortnite. If they want some close quarters 5v5 first-person shooter, they play Counter-Strike. I don't really think Epic Games should have to dilute Fortnite to bring in as many players as possible. If they make an extraction shooter mode in the future, whatever. At least it'll be about shooting people, but I hope they're okay with it maybe adding only 1,000 players to Fortnite's overall player count. To me, it seems like a negative trade. You waste all this effort making a new mode, think it's going to do well because everyone tries it out for a week, then see it have very few players for the rest of its lifespan. You maybe did attract a few new players to Fortnite with this edition, but that was probably not enough. Then, when your mode is ultimately considered a failure and you stop supporting it, you leave all those dedicated players you initially tried to attract in the dirt. Now let's talk about Fortnite OG. I said I didn't want them adding a permanent OG mode to the game, but it is what it is. It's not that I don't like OG, it's just that I didn't want the player base being so split up. I was also worried about Epic Games keeping projectile-based guns in the main mode with another hit-scan mode being added, but luckily that fear was unfounded. Anyway, I mentioned it before. We had Battle Royale and Reload, then zero-build versions of that, then ranked versions of all that. Adding a third mode would only further stretch the player base. Not only do you have these game modes, but multiple party sizes for each, skill-based matchmaking, and several server regions. There is so much division here, and Fortnite doesn't have those high player counts it once had, so they sadly have to pack lobbies with bots to get that nice 100 player count. I saw some commenter in the Chapter 5 video's comments section say something like, "Oh, and you're one of those people who cries about bots." Dude, it's an online multiplayer game! Of course reasonable people are going to complain about running into bots. Why would someone play Fortnite Battle Royale if they didn't want to face real players all the time? I don't hop on Smash Bros. Online, select 1v1s, and expect to be matched up with a level 3 CPU 40% of the time. Bots are plain annoying. They waste your time, can distract you from real players, and even give your position away. You know what's even worse than all that? Running into TNTina bots. How could Epic Games allow such a cool character to be in the bot cosmetic pool? It gets my hopes up sometimes, man. Like, I'll think I'm about to show someone who the better TNTina user is in the lobby for a second, then realize the player's not even real. The only positive I can give bots is they make the occasional challenging quest easier. Hit an opponent with a Typhoon Blade while on a motorcycle? Are you mad? I'm not doing that to a real player. It's better done on a bot since it can't fight back. However, if Epic Games sprinkles hostile NPCs on the map, which they do all the time now, you don't even need bots for these quests because those NPCs also count as opponents. The only real solution to reducing bots in lobbies, since Epic Games doesn't know how to reel in more users, is to lower the player cap, like I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the Simpsons mini-season. So yeah, I don't like bots. They're annoying and don't add much to the experience. I think it's kind of sad that they're just bots and they're real are callouts I have to regularly utter when playing this game. Alright, back to OG. The thing about OG is it's not OG. Sure, the old map has returned and you're using the old AR model with the flipped front sight, but what can't be brought back are the players that made OG Fortnite OG. It's been 8 years. People know how to play the game better than ever before. Everyone's mighty sweaty now. Like Lachlan said in his OG season video, box fighting kids at Loot Lake was not something he remembered doing back then. I know I just went on a tangentially related rant about bots, but I'm going to do it again with skill-based matchmaking this time. I like the idea of skill-based matchmaking. I mean, why should a player just starting out be potentially put in the same lobby as someone who plays the game every day and is significantly better as a result? That's a bit unfair for the newbie, right? In Chapter 5 Season 2, Epic released a Midas-themed Floor is Lava LTM. Skill-based matchmaking was not enabled for the mode. One minute, I'd be fighting people who had clearly not played the game in a while, the next, I'd get full-pieced and edited on by some likely middle school dropouts hoping to go pro. It sucked. The second my friends and I finished whatever quests were tied to the LTM, we never touched it again. Skill-based matchmaking is necessary in a game like Fortnite. Unfortunately, it also sucks in a game like Fortnite. It just doesn't work well, especially nowadays. I mainly play with a particular group of friends, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, they suck. Now, I'm not going to act like I'm leagues above them or anything, but I'm the only one with faint muscle memory from 300 or so hours of Chapter 1 and 2 solos on the Nintendo Switch. Anyway, my point is, we are not good. Skill-based matchmaking, though, can't figure that out. I'd say it works to an extent since I'd consider ourselves having a pretty standard win-to-loss ratio, but many of those losses are just bad losses. Like, instantly dying to the first real people you encounter after 5 minutes of seeing nothing but bots bad. You'd think the people killing us mistakenly queued into a regular match instead of ranked or something. And no, I don't have clips to accompany these statements. I never think to save that kind of footage. Besides, gameplay where my friends and I are alive is embarrassing enough.
I gotta reload! Right here! 113! I have a 113! He's one shot!
I know for a fact we're being grouped up with the wrong kinds of people, because once in a blue moon, we get these weird sessions where the players we fight actually seem to be on our level. We're not winning every game, of course, but battles we lose feel fair and well fought, not decisively one-sided. It's sadly always short-lived, though. Our problem is caused by the same thing I mentioned earlier when discussing bots. Everything is so split up. Skill-based matchmaking tries to put players of the same skill range in your games, but there clearly just aren't many people similar to you queued up at that moment on that mode with the same party size in your server region. So it ends up compensating by getting players that do have the same parameters as you, but not the same skill range. Then there still aren't enough players to reach 100, so they throw bots into the remaining slots. If Epic Games didn't degrade Fortnite with extra Battle Royale modes and simply put all their effort into bettering the main one, skill-based matchmaking would likely be great since every player looking to play Battle Royale would be playing the one mode, meaning less weakening of the algorithm's logic to pack lobbies enough and higher chances of similarly skilled players being in the same matches. So yeah, skill-based matchmaking isn't necessarily bad. There just aren't enough people playing Fortnite, which I'd say is due to both the passage of time and Epic Games just not making the best decisions. Every time a new season of OG is out, my friends and I play till we win to get the new victory umbrella. But oh my god, as the year went on, this got exponentially harder. OG surprisingly launched without skill-based matchmaking, but that didn't last very long because people rightfully complained about being matched up with crazy tryhards. Nowadays, it might as well be disabled again. No one is playing OG anymore, especially Zero Build, so even with skill-based matchmaking, my friends and I are running into people that are a little too good for us. It's unfortunate because OG was actually really fun initially. Remember when it first began at the start of Chapter 6, and people were really annoyed when shields were insanely hard to come by? Well, I actually really liked that. I loved how everyone in these lobbies was in shambles throughout the match, especially in top 10 situations. Games were intense, not because of sweats, but because health widely varied among players. It was quite refreshing to tag someone a couple times from a distance and see they weren't at max health for once like every player you encounter in the main Battle Royale mode. It also forced you to be more careful and strategic knowing that you yourself were also low on health. Shields and meds are so easy to come by in regular Battle Royale, you always have to just assume every opponent has 200 plus health, and that can sometimes make you paranoid over the slightest loss in your own health. I don't know, I'm not saying they should make healing items hard to come by or anything. I guess I just liked how the start of Fortnite OG, with its cruddy old slurp juice, no minis, and hard to come by big pots, made Fortnite feel a bit different in a good way. What also helped was the fact that OG was brand new, meaning a wide variety of players were trying it out, so my friends and I were being properly matched up. With the seasons passing and people realizing this mode isn't all that interesting, all that remained were the sweats who think they're cool for only playing OG, making it much harder to play. The last couple of victory umbrellas were legitimately hell to get. My friends and I would lose so many games that we'd eventually resort to hiding till the end of a match. I guess that's technically an OG strategy, but hiding was way more fun and exciting in Chapter 1, back when pretty much everyone else was equally scared and unskilled. Anyway, once we got the win, we were done. Straight back to the main mode. There is sadly very little fun to be had in OG now. Regardless of sweats ruining the mode, no matter how accurate Epic Games tries to make OG with their old models, sound effects, graphics, and item drop rates, it's all ultimately a farce, a feeble replica of a once good time. That kind of brings me back to why I liked Chapter 1 OG. It wasn't masquerading as a simple reversion to a 2017 build of Fortnite. We kept our movement mechanics, save for swimming, porta bunkers were abundant for Zero Build, there were those rift events that gave you grapple gloves, and items were in their latest states, even updated for convenience. It was modern Fortnite, but on an old map. And sure, you can do your sprinting and mantling in the OG mode too, but it's just... Dude, I am really rambling right now. It's just not the same. I don't know how to explain it. It just feels like I'm playing with a cardboard cutout of Chapter 1 instead of a real one that's simply remixed. Also, the OG season was special because it was only going to be around for a short time. If you make it a separate permanent mode, well, it's not special anymore, and people are eventually going to lose interest. But hey, at least they brought the Zappatron back briefly. I'm sure every Fortnite YouTuber made one of those "after 3,000 days" videos with their faces taking up 3/4 of the thumbnails. I should just wrap this up now. Fortnite OG is not very interesting. My friends and I just hop on whenever a new season begins, play until we get the umbrella, then go right back to the main mode. I'm sure it can be fun blindly experiencing what the map and loot pools were like back then if you're a new or relatively new player, but for me, I already experienced what OG Fortnite was like, when it really was OG. In the end, I don't care to play an ultimately soulless repeat. Oh, I guess I should talk about the OG pass a little bit, huh? At the start of Chapter 6, Renegade Raider and Aerial Assault Trooper were brought back. If I remember correctly, people were either like, "Wow, this is cool," or "Oh my god, no! How could they do this? Now the skins aren't OG anymore!" I can understand the concerns of the latter group, but these things were always item shop skins, meaning they could have returned at any time. They weren't bound by anything like a battle pass or console bundle. Speaking of battle passes, I genuinely thought old ones were going to come back around this time. OG Fortnite became permanent, and it was going to be a sort of rewind mode where we go through all the seasons again starting from Chapter 1 Season 1. They introduced the OG Pass, which gave us some original cosmetics based on stuff released around that time. Battle Passes were introduced in Season 2, so if Epic Games were to ever bring back old ones, Season 2 of Fortnite OG would have been the absolute best time to do so. The OG Pass would literally be an OG Pass, where you could get actual OG rewards. However, during the last week of January, I saw this on the newsfeed, which clearly depicted a remixed Black Knight, the original being the highest tiered skin of the Season 2 Battle Pass, so the idea of them bringing old stuff back immediately died. Epic Games totally missed their chance there. I doubt there will ever be a time as opportune as that in the future. So yeah, I'm in the boat that doesn't care much about all that exclusivity stuff. If they ever brought the Chapter 2 Season 2 Battle Pass back, would I be angry more players would have access to the original TNTina, the best Fortnite skin? No. You can have it. It's whatever. It's a cosmetic in a live service video game. Just know this, no matter how much you like the skin, I will always like it more than you. I will always like it better than you. Oh, and bringing the Battle Pass back for that season specifically would be pretty cool, as Epic Games could potentially allow access to both the Shadow and Ghost styles the skins had. I got all the Shadow variants back then because they were just better, but I'd be lying if I said Ghost TNTina wasn't also pretty cool. Not only that, it would give players a second chance at all those gold variants too. Getting XP back then was a joke. I played Fortnite religiously that season and could only get to level 151 before it ended. It would also be the perfect time to update that Maya skin to make her fully customizable rather than forged. I'm sure lots of people would like that. At the end of the day, Epic Games only cares about money, and they definitely know, even right now, that bringing back old cosmetics would be extremely profitable. It'd make them more money than Rocket Racing was ever going to make. Okay, you know how I just said Epic Games only cares about money? Well, turns out they did propose a change to Battle Pass exclusivity, back in 2024. They're not handling it the way I thought they would though. Rather than doing the cool thing of letting players buy and progress old Battle Passes, it seems they're just going to randomly throw individual cosmetics from old passes in the item shop, likely at full price, with more desirable items taking precedence. So, if you wanted the original Midas skin, instead of spending 950 V-Bucks to get him on top of the other 99 rewards from the Chapter 2 Season 2 Battle Pass, you're going to have to buy just him for 2,000 V-Bucks in the shop since he's a legendary rarity skin. Seems a little scummy, but I guess that's the caveat of not having played back then to earn the rewards for cheap. It says cosmetics are eligible to return once the battle passes they're from expire and 18 months elapse, but I assume that only applies to ones released after this post since it says items in future Fortnite battle passes, so I guess Midas isn't a good example. Let's just say a Marvel nerd will be able to get War Machine from Chapter 5 Season 4, but not Iron Man from Chapter 2 Season 4. I hate to say it, but I don't care about Reload anymore. I haven't touched it since Chapter 2 Remix, and even then, it was out of obligation.
I need this, bruh.
It was great when it came out. Wrecked and the Marvel season were really tiresome. Unfortunately, the things that made Reload so appealing to me back then, the hit scan loot pool and lack of obnoxious seasonal gimmicks, were no longer exclusive to it. While Chapter 6 did have its gimmicks, hit scan was at least brought back. On top of that, OG returned as its own mode, and that of course has hitscan weapons and is devoid of any crazy mechanics since Fortnite Chapter 1 was very much just a game about guns. So really, the only thing Reload has going for it is the respawn mechanic, but even that I don't care for, which sucks because I would have adored this a while back. Playing Zero Build during Chapter 3 was rough, especially at the start. Before Zero Build, if I was being shot at from afar, I'd quickly turn in the direction I was hit and place a wall and ramp for cover and recon. If I was in a close-up fight, realized I was missing too many shots and about to die, well, I'd frantically place a wall between me and the opponent to save myself from an early death. Building can efficiently prevent a quick loss, or at least prolong an inevitable one, and I was too used to that. I really hated getting deep into these near 20-minute matches, only to die in less than a second, and half the time losses felt unfair because the Chapter 3 map was clearly not designed for no building, options for cover were bad, and movement items just weren't as abundant as they needed to be for Zero Build. So, having a Battle Royale mode where games are shorter due to a smaller map and lobby size, while also being able to respawn would have been great at that time. However, even if Reload had been released back then, I still would have dropped it because Chapter 4 fixed all the problems I had with Chapter 3 Zero Build. The map's design was great. Lots of twists and turns and uneven jagged terrain. Perfect for no building. Porta-bunkers, which were introduced way too late into Chapter 3, carried over. And the movement of Chapter 4 was just amazing. The Shockwave Hammer, the Kinetic Blade, Slap Juice, certain augments. Chapter 4 was, for the most part, a great chapter. Most deaths no longer felt cheap, making unsuccessful matches feel less like wastes of time, no matter how far into them I got. Anyway, Reload essentially feels like a solution to a problem that no longer exists. The only thing that'd make me want to play this mode is if the main one had mainly projectile-based weapons again, but that's hopefully not going to happen. Looking back, I probably should have considered playing Reload during Season 2. I may not want to play Reload anymore, but that doesn't mean it's bad or a dead mode. I'm pretty sure it's doing decently well. It got pretty substantial updates over the year, including a Squid Game collab for some reason.
Oh my god, I knew that was you. Hong Sang-yong! Hong Sang-yong, Squid Game! From the Squid Game! Using the Squid Game! Hong Sang-yong! From the Squid Game!
So yeah, enjoy yourselves, Reload players. I really wish I could care for this mode. When I saw Blitz added, I was like, ugh, another Battle Royale? Is this going to get a ranked mode? It's no build. Are we gonna get a build one too, and a ranked for it? Luckily, it was just a singular mode. I hate to admit it, but I was captivated by Blitz for a while. Usually, when some new game mode comes out, I'll try it with my friends briefly, then forget it exists and go back to the main one. This time, however, after enough hard-fought matches in regular Battle Royale with my friends, I was like, hey, let's play Blitz now! And we'd end our play sessions with tons of Blitz matches. And we did this a lot. In Blitz, every player starts off a match with the same predetermined inventory, plus a medallion. Your starting hand isn't all that significant since you'll likely replace whatever they give you upon landing, but depending on the update, you can get some pretty fun stuff to start the game. There was an avatar update one week where every player spawned in with all 4 bending abilities, and that was hectic as hell. The starting medallion is honestly the backbone of Blitz. While there's usually a movement item or two to keep you zooming around, matches are a lot more fun and intense if your base character is enhanced by something like Shogun X's Infinite Sprint, Megalodon's Infinite Nitro, or Cerberus's Skull Dashes. It kind of sucks whenever the starting medallion is Night Rose's passive reload, the Machinist's shield regeneration, or Ares' extra damage medallion. Like, come on man, I want movement!
I'm not seeing enough.
I really don't get the Ares one. If everyone's doing slightly extra damage in the lobby, then no one is. What's the point? Other medallions can be acquired mid-match through supply drops, and I think something like Ares' medallion should be exclusive to them. It's better for one player to have such a buff in this mode as opposed to everyone. Like I've already stated before, I didn't really mind the concept of medallions. Most weren't a big deal in Chapter 5, but a select few had abilities that were just way too good for a single player to have in a game. However, regardless of their effects, medallions are totally fine in Blitz because every player in the lobby starts out with the same one. If you think infinite ammo is overpowered for some reason, well, it doesn't matter here because everyone has infinite ammo. Even if one player were to exclusively get a medallion through one of those supply drops, it's not a big deal because its effect ends up being extremely insignificant in the grand scheme of things. What's that? You got the Machinist's shield medallion from a supply drop? That's going to do next to nothing. We're already more than halfway through the match, the remaining players are likely carrying better consumable heals, and even if your shields get cracked and you scamper away to replenish them, there's nowhere to run this late into the game on this small map, and everyone has crazy movement items to catch up to you. This mode does not promote passivity. Boons are also in this mode, but more plentiful. I think they're the least influential thing in Blitz, but I don't know. It's kind of satisfying collecting as many as you can, even if you aren't always reaping the benefits of them. There's a ranking system here like in Seasons 3 and 4, but ranking up nets you an exotic or mythic weapon. The stuff you get can be pretty hit or miss, especially when the standard loot pool is already pretty decent. Like, I rarely picked up any mythic ARs when the Spire Rifle was obtainable. I did pick up Ocean's mythic AUG whenever I could though. It may not be as good as Sloane's Burst from Chapter 2 Season 8, but I'll take what I can get. Many of the exotics from Lawless were included here, so I actually finally got to use some of them, though not for too long. I had no idea this Lawless Trinity Rifle was in the game back then. This thing seems crazy. Overall, I just really enjoyed how fast-paced this mode was, with the constant inclusion of movement allowing players to zoom around the tiny map, and how it's all about collecting as many buffs and high-rarity loot in as little time as possible. Now, the fact these games are short is the only reason this all works. If Blitz were the standard 20-minute 100-player games on a normal-sized map, it would suck. This kind of chaos and intensity is only tolerable in bite-sized matches. Like I said earlier, I have a feeling Boons might not stick around, and I'm hoping Medallions finally go away. But they at least have a home here in Blitz. If Epic Games is going to make new Boons and Medallions, they should leave them for this mode, like they've already done before. As fun as Blitz is, I eventually got over it, just like any other mode that isn't the main one, and I guess many people did as well. The last several sessions I had in Blitz were loaded with bots. It was honestly kind of ridiculous. It made some of the real players in my lobby super complacent, which is another downside to having bots in Fortnite. Look at this clip. I'm getting ready to kill a bot, but hear a crown to my left. I think nothing of it at first, but quickly realize, wait a minute, a crown means a real player. I gotta get out of here. So I turn back to run. I'm literally right in front of this person, but they don't even acknowledge me because they probably think I'm a bot like the rest. So I just turn back around and pounce when they get distracted by the actual bot. That guy must have been pissed, like, what? That was a real guy? Now that I think about it, Blitz is the final nail in the coffin for the Victory Royale. Winning matches lost its flair over the years. People went from posting screenshots of their wins to just going, oh cool, I won, then instantly moving on. Obviously, that's natural. Winning is nice and all, but why would you be as excited over your 112th win as you were your first, or even 10th? With this new mode now chock full of bots whose games last an average of 5 minutes, Victory Royales are made even less special because they're so easy to farm here. By extension, it also ruined crown wins. The first week of Season 4, like 3 days after the reset, I died to some kid who flaunted over 100 crown wins. Normally, that'd be both impressive and sad. Impressive because, well, that's a lot of wins, and sad because it shows this player has nothing else going on in life other than maybe their parents' divorce. However, it's no longer impressive because I know for a fact you got all those wins by just grinding the super short Blitz mode. Now all that number is pathetic. If you're going to taunt, just gritty or something. Another Battle Royale mode they added was Delulu. Oh my, how quirky! What a quirky name! God, it's so bad. I don't want to say that again, so I'm just going to call it the proximity chat mode. It is what it was after all. As long as they were close enough, players, regardless of if they were on the same team or not, could hear each other through their mics. You were thrown onto a random part of the island and were expected to team up with random players. It wasn't like 2 players agreeing to team up while still being separate in-game. You could actually be put in the same squad by performing a special emote together. That's really all there is to it. Other than the proximity chat and teaming up, it was just Battle Royale. It's worth mentioning this mode isn't really meant to be played with existing friends. You can queue into the same game, of course, but when a match starts, you're split up and can't communicate until you find each other. Not at all what my friends and I were expecting, but we just ended up cheating and hopping on a group call together. Anyway, it was obviously quite fun being able to talk to all these random people. It reminded me of duo and squad fills back in the day where you could chat with the random chill dudes you got grouped up with. You can still do this, of course, but something about it just isn't the same. Oh yeah, getting that victory umbrella was painful. It took forever for me and my friends to all get it. The problem was that only one person could win in these matches. Even if the last 4 people were in the same squad, the game didn't end. That's because on top of teaming up, you could sever ties and leave a squad whenever you wanted. So even if you got all buddy-buddy with the last few players, it was ultimately still a free-for-all. In the end, proximity chat was fun for a little while, but once my friends and I got the umbrella, we didn't really feel the need to play it anymore. I guess I can end this with a few clips I saved from it.
How about we gonna do this? Come on, back. Bro, you a bitch.
Bro, y'all suck. Y'all suck dick. Y'all eat ass.
Hey, oh no! I'm sorry, anime's trash.
No school, it's cheating, bro. It's
I'm peaceful. I'm peaceful. I'm peaceful. I'm peaceful. Look out. I'm peaceful. I'm peaceful.
Fortnite Chapter 6 was okay. Quality definitely fluctuated among its seasons. We had some cool gimmicks, some bad gimmicks, a slew of melee weapons that were either somewhat tolerable or made you want to break your monitor, and a few other things. Though ultimately pretty minor, Boons were a nice little addition to the game I wouldn't mind seeing more of. Medallions were still here, but heavily toned down this time around, though there were still a couple that could be annoying. Of course, the best thing about this chapter was that weapons were hit scan again. It was just so nice not having to do calculus to fire a measly 26 damage bullet. Epic Games can ruin Fortnite as much as they want, and even though I'll hate it and complain about it, as long as I can actually shoot things in this game about shooting people, I'll probably be able to tolerate it. With a group of friends at least. You know, one thing I haven't touched on at all, in this video or the last, is lore. Do people still care about this game's narrative? I don't know what's going on in this game anymore. I'd love for there to be some kind of story worth investing in, but nothing's been interesting since the 7 disappeared. Anyway, a number of modes were added to the game this chapter. While I did play a couple and enjoyed my time with them, these modes can only be interesting for so long. I don't care how many updates they get. The main Battle Royale mode is what the vast majority of people launch Fortnite for, and its updates are always the most substantial and capable of bringing players back. The collaborations didn't let up, but I wasn't expecting them to. As I've said before, collaborations are fine in moderation and can be pretty cool if they actually fit in Fortnite, but no matter what, I'll always prefer the original stuff. I don't care if they put in a video game character I like that uses guns, I'd still rather use an original Fortnite skin. Even though the Star Wars and Simpsons mini-seasons were the most enjoyable times of Chapter 6 for me, I don't like the precedent they've set. It's clear these collab mini-seasons are going to be the new shtick Epic Games milks the hell out of for the foreseeable future. Fortnite was quite the trendsetter back then, but with so much time having passed, they're more of a trend chaser now. Remember the Thanos stuff from Chapter 1? That all started because people at Marvel liked Fortnite and thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could do like an Avengers Fortnite mashup? Let's call up Epic Games. That was nice since it was somewhat unprecedented and a joint labor of love. Now it just feels like Epic Games frantically reaches out to companies in the entertainment industry on a weekly basis hoping to get a new collaboration and to make a quick buck. Oh, and Season 3. I liked that season, but you think the superhero theming was something thought up out of thin air? No. During planning, Epic Games was probably like, okay, that lame Superman movie that's most likely going to underperform is coming out around that season, so we'll obviously add the new Superman to the game. Oh, how about we just make that season about superheroes? I guess speaking of making a quick buck, kicks are still dumb. They'll never not be dumb, really. Epic Games bringing the degeneracy of sneaker collecting to Fortnite was a mistake. Kicks and all that other garbage made for the lame modes introduced in Chapter 5 pretty much ruined the item shop. I checked it maybe 5 times the entire chapter. It's just so cluttered, like, Jesus Christ, man, what a mess. I'm not gonna go through all that just so I can find the section that has the original skins maybe worth looking at. They added filters at the start of the chapter because they knew there was too much in the shop, but your selections don't persist. If you log off, they reset. If you play a match and return to lobby, they reset. I get they don't want to save your filters because, oh, what if there's something new in the shop you'd actually like to get, but you filtered its category out a few days ago so you don't end up seeing it? No, trust me. I'm never buying kicks, microphone stands, or wheels for cars. Just let me pretend they don't exist. Add an option to save item shop filters in the settings or something. Maybe then I'll actually look at the item shop every time I log on. Anyway, I'd respect kicks a little more if it wasn't just lazily culling the feet of your character, but actually switching to a slightly remodeled version of certain skins to remove their original footwear. Like, putting kicks on characters like Torin and Korra looks ridiculous because they're wearing boots. They're straight up stuffing their footwear into other footwear. How about you put in the effort to remodel these skins to not have their original shoes on so it actually looks a little normal when they're wearing kicks? Man, it's only a matter of time till other clothing options are added. The item shop will be even worse, and there will likely be less reason for Epic Games to put out reskins. Wow, I'd love to see a version of this Plantina chicken heftier mechanic gear, and then Epic Games comes in and says, oh, sorry, we're not gonna do that. But hey, we made a welding helmet for the hats category. Why don't you put that on your character? You're cool spending 800 V-Bucks on something small like that as opposed to 1200 on a fully decked out cool looking reskin, right? We haven't gotten hats yet, but we did get another stupid customization category. Sidekicks. I was just immediately appalled when I saw this. I swear I'm not trying to hate on everything Epic adds to this game, but this is just vile, and I'll get into why. First off, why the hell would you want a cute pet tagging along with you on the Battle Royale map? My friend's Peely dog is so sad to see him knocked. I don't want to see that, it makes me feel bad. I don't want my cute innocent doggy in a gun-filled war zone. It's like those pet backblings from Chapter 1. Never bought the battle passes they were in, but if I did, I never would have equipped them. I wouldn't have wanted my cute little Bonesy getting technically shot in the face while someone's shooting at me from behind.
I love this back bling, but come on, bro. Who wants to shoot this guy?
The worst thing about sidekicks is how nastily monetized they are. These little guys are customizable, and before you can even equip them, you have to permanently lock in your customization choices. Now, that alone is not a problem. One-time customizations are fine. However, Epic Games is using this functionality a bit maliciously. Nothing you do to your sidekicks is technically permanent. If you want to change the appearance of your pet, you just have to buy another one from the item shop and lock in a different set of choices. Isn't that kind of insane? Is there any reason, from a design perspective, that you'd make something like a virtual pet, from its name to appearance, unchangeable after creating it? Of course there is. It's because it's your pet. You're supposed to grow a sort of emotional attachment to this kind of thing. It's your own little guy you uniquely created yourself. You're supposed to cherish it, knowing you made all the right choices when customizing them. Kind of like the Maya skin and that umbrella from Chapter 2 Season 3. Except your emotional attachment to something like a cute pet would be significantly greater. It totally could have just been, buy the pet once, then change them up however you like, whenever you like. But no, they wanted to get as much money out of it as possible, so they forced the changes you make to be permanent. Aw, are you regretting the way you made your dog look? Well, just buy another one, idiot! Better yet, buy a Bonesy for every possible customization combination, why don't you? Man, and I thought the concept of kicks was bad. It's stupid, yes, but the idea of sidekicks is just downright evil. Alright, that's enough digressing. Let's wrap this up. Chapter 5 was the worst Fortnite had ever been for me. So much so I actually felt like making a video discussing my gripes with it. I left said video on quite the sour note, so I wanted to make this video as an update to say, hey, Fortnite got a little better, I'm not going to act like it's still horrible. The new chapter wasn't perfect obviously, but I had way more fun this time around. I'm not making a Chapter 7 video, or a Chapter 8 video, or a Chapter 15 video. I'm not a Fortnite YouTuber, or a YouTuber in general. I am a Fortnite player though, and I want to stick around. I like Fortnite. Maybe it's not as good as it once was, maybe I have no desire to play solos anymore, and maybe the owners aren't as respectable as they once were, but I want to see where this game goes. My friends and I still play Fortnite together and have fun doing so we're all gonna keep playing no matter how bad it gets for as long as we're able. Maybe the game will stop getting content updates sooner than we think, or maybe it somehow goes on for another 20 years, but we naturally move on way before that. Who knows which will come first? Probably the latter, but we'll have to see. If you made it this far, thanks for watching, I guess. I'll see you when I feel like it.